To you in your SFM sports headlines, soccer action. Mamelodi Sundowns brushing aside SuperSport United 3-0 in their Betaway Premiership Tswane derby at the Lucas Moripe Stadium. And rugby, Lions prop Asenati Ntlabakanya has rejected an offer from the French giants Toulouse to stay in Johannesburg. We'll have all these stories and more at around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Today is Thursday, the 6th of February, 2025. Good morning and welcome to it, the Thursday edition of The Morning Brief on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together, informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. Coming up over the next 3 hours, let me give you a quick run through. The United States President Donald Trump's proposal to take over war-ruined Gaza and create what he calls the Riviera of the Middle East has drawn global condemnation. Lots of reaction coming through from that announcement by Donald Trump. I don't think he says it's a proposal. He says actually the United States will go ahead and do this, and is basically saying the Palestinians who live in Gaza should be relocated to other countries. Well, the comments have been rebuked by international powers including Russia, China, and Germany. Trump said that he envisioned building something of a resort, it sounds like it, of a resort that would create employment and, accommodation for many people, but he doesn't see Palestinians continuing to live in Gaza in this vision of his. And he says international communities could live in harmony in the tiny coastal enclave, and where more than 47,000 people have been killed, of course, by Israeli forces over the last 16 months. So you want to hear the incisive take of Professor Stephen Friedman on that issue. He's a political analyst as well as the author of the book Good Jew, Bad Jew, Racism, Anti-Semitism, and the Assault on Meaning. I'll be talking to Professor Stephen Friedman in the next few minutes in our international feature, and that's coming up at about 6:20. Then we'll touch on a debate that started a few years ago, but it's back now, front and center in Lesotho. It is a motion by lawmakers in that country for the country to reclaim large parts of South African land, including the entirety of the Free State, parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Well, that motion is back on the table and it's being discussed once again. It also happens, of course, at the same time that Lesotho is asking the government of this country, of South Africa, to consider interventions to assist Basotho traveling into and through South Africa to other countries by giving them extended days, so to deal with the irregular migration and movement of Basotho through South Africa. There's that proposal, but at the same time, another proposal being discussed is the one about possibly reclaiming large parts of South African land, including the entirety of the Free State and parts of KwaZulu-Natal. So we'll talk to Kgosi Makubakube, who is a coordinator of parliamentary affairs in Lesotho, and that conversation is coming up just after 7 a.m. Then a bit later on in the show, we'll tell you about this study that has come out from the University of Stellenbosch. It found that boys are falling behind in comparison with girls at every stage of schooling, and are more likely to repeat a grade or even to drop out than girls are. So we'll find out what are the factors at play, and we will touch on that story a bit later on in the show. But as you know, today is the day for President Cyril Ramaphosa to deliver the State of the Nation address, and that is coming up a bit later on this evening. So I want you to get your views on it. What is your assessment? What is the true state of our nation? Just give me a quick reflection, no more than a minute. Reflect on, what is a priority right now? What for you should not be a priority? What should be on the agenda? what should not be on the agenda, what can we afford to postpone, and what is absolutely pressing and needs our attention and needs it immediately. But also, we've just been reflecting a little bit about, yesterday I talked about one of the big challenges at the moment. For me, usually I'm able to pinpoint and say crime is the issue of the moment. But I've gotten to a point where the state of our public finances, yes, that is the word. The state of our public finances is what really is the overarching concern for me, because of the, sitting where I sit every morning, the number of calls you take where people are saying we can't do X, Y, and Z, which X, Y, and Z is absolutely critical, but we can't do it because there is simply no budget for it. The number of government departments and entities that have done what I always say is a bit like, driving a manual car and feeling overwhelmed when you are a learner driver, and then you just let go of all the pedals and you say, excuse me for using this, Jesus take the wheel, as you've heard people saying, that it's all in God's hands. There's nothing I can do. The number of departments who are doing that in provinces has given me the sense that the state of our public finances, we won't be able to resolve anything else until we're able to solve for that particular conundrum of our public finances. A few days ago, I took a voice note that was from someone talking about the Gauteng Department of Education not paying the bills, the electricity bills of certain schools in the province because, there's simply no money. We'll see later. And that causing so many problems for education. You've heard of provincial departments in KwaZulu-Natal saying to service providers, hey, if you can, please assist us. The Eastern Cape did exactly the same. I think it was October or November last year, Public Works, and said the next time you get paid will be on the 1st of April 2025. So for me, that is the overarching issue of the moment. I don't know, perhaps for you it could be different. Put it on the table. What is the state of our nation? But also, just lastly, let's touch also on the cost of hosting the State of the Nation address as an event in Cape Town. We know that Parliament is under reconstruction, so it doesn't happen at Parliament, but it does happen at the City Hall. I'm just wondering, given what I've said, the cost of doing all of it, does this need to just be an event that President Ramaphosa takes to the podium at Union Buildings and addresses all of us without incurring all of those costs? Weigh in on those issues. I'll take your calls. And Musa with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered, as well as Sipho Mantula with your Africa update. Your calls to 086 000 2032, and I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107.
Bertha Charuma on SAFM.
I could be a girl who finds herself a knight in shining armor, but my financial status is horror. I owe everywhere. Do I then sit? Do I preempt what my situation is like? I mean, is it that important that we talk about our debts?
It's really, really important, especially if you're going to go into a committed relationship where you potentially might move in together or you might get married. I think we know, and I think in a lot of ways, that financial issues are one of the biggest reasons why relationships break.
Queen Malobane is our provincial general manager at Metropolitan.
The Chill Zone with Bertha Charuma. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Hey, good morning to you, Anne.
Good morning, Tulas.
So for a change, I know what's on your diary, what's leading your diary. State of the Nation address this evening. What are we expecting?
It definitely is. So many are eagerly awaiting to hear what President Cyril Ramaphosa's address for 2025 will entail, and this will be the first SONA to be delivered under the Government of National Unity. Some are hoping to hear more on how the government plans to deal with high incidence of joblessness, crime and many other social ills. And in other stories, before I forget as well, is the situation in Eastern DRC, very important, which has claimed the lives of 14 soldiers there.
Yeah.
In other news, the Gauteng Finance and Economic Development MEC, Lebogang Mahile, who attended the Africa Mining in Durban, Cape Town, has called on a forward-lasting solution to illegal mining, and he says the escalation of illegal mining in the province is a serious concern. We also have an update on the identification process of the bodies of illegal miners that was retrieved from an abandoned mine shaft in Stilfontein in the northwest. Autopsies have been concluded on about 80 bodies. Gender activists are demanding harsher punishment for police officers who commit rape and sexual violence crimes, and this follows a disturbing report that at least 110 cases of sexual assault involving police officers were reported to the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. That was during the 2023-2024 financial year. And just lastly, also in court today, former President Jacob Zuma's bid to privately prosecute his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, likely to reach finality, and this as the matter will be returning to the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg. So some of the stories that we are focusing on this morning.
All right, and thank you for that. That's Ann Musa. You'll be hearing from her every half hour here on the Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So let's tell you what your weather is looking like this morning. 3 warnings coming through from the South African Weather Service, so I'll give you those as well as the temperatures for the major centers. The first one is a yellow level 2 warning. It says severe thunderstorms with heavy downpours, hail, excessive lightning, and strong to damaging winds, leading to localized flooding of susceptible areas and roads and localized damage to infrastructure, and that is expected over Gauteng, the central and eastern parts of the Free State, the eastern parts of the Northwest, and the western and southwestern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. The second warning, yellow level 2, disruptive rain leading to localized flooding of susceptible settlements and roads, is expected over the eastern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. And lastly, a yellow level 1 warning, damaging winds and waves leading to difficulty in navigation at sea, and that is expected between Cape Columbine and Cape Agulhas, spreading to Plettenberg Bay on Friday. The temperatures then for the main cities, Pretoria will be a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 30. Johannesburg, 18 to 28. Mbombela, 21 to 29. Polokwane, 19 to 28. Mahikeng, 20 to 33. Bloemfontein, 20 to 25. Kimberley, 20 to 29. Cape Town, 17 to 24. George, 15 to 22. Gqeberha, 18 to 22. East London, 19 to 22. Durban, 23 to 26. Richards Bay, 24 to 27. And finally, Pietermaritzburg, 17 to 22.
The National School Nutrition Program and social grants are instrumental in ensuring that children's needs for food and other essential services are met. We need a minimum health promotion levy of 20% on all sugary drinks to support social protection initiatives. Find out more on the next episode of Chew on This at heala.org, HEALA.org, on 30 January from 3 p.m.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course, We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
21 minutes after 6. Now, the U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal to take over war-ruined Gaza and create what he calls a Riviera of the Middle East has drawn global condemnation. The comments have been rebuked by international powers, including Russia, China, and Germany. But, let's give you a sense of what Donald Trump had to say. Just listen to it. You have to hear it to believe it. And after playing that clip for you, I'll then turn to my conversation with Professor Stephen Friedman.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job.
Those were the words of Donald Trump there while he was hosting the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Listening to that is Professor Stephen Friedman, who is research professor in the humanities faculty of the University of Johannesburg, but also the author of the book Good Jew, Bad Jew, Racism, Anti-Semitism, and the Assault on Meaning. Prof, good morning, and thank you for your time. It's incredulous, isn't it? Is there, when you listen to that, is there even something of a semblance of a feasible plan or proposal that you heard there from Donald Trump?
Hi, good morning, Thulasizwe. Well, it depends what you mean by feasible. I mean, feasible can mean doable. I suppose if you drop enough 200-pound bombs on women and children at some stage, what he's asking for could in theory work. But I think even on that basis, it's not going to work. It's an amazing clip, and it's an amazing statement, because really, we're back in the age of 18th century colonialism. If people who are not white are in the way of some beachside development, you kill as many of them as you can, and then you steal their land. So, it's quite obvious what they're trying to do, but I don't think it is doable, because if they're going to do it, they're going to have to, kill 500,000 people in Gaza. They're going to have to somehow get rid of Hamas, which they failed to do in 15 months. And they're going to have to persuade Egypt and Jordan to do something which will probably get their governments overthrown. So, it probably isn't feasible, but of course it is very scary that, the leader of America can be talking about that in the 21st century.
Yeah. What in the history that we've known of that region hitherto suggests that it could even possibly be something, because I've heard some padding of his comments saying that perhaps he's not talking about forcibly removing Palestinians, but perhaps giving some incentive for Palestinians in Gaza to move to other countries. But what in the history of what has happened until now even suggests that that would be something that some Palestinians in Gaza would be willing to even consider?
Well, there's nothing at all in the history, because, of course, he doesn't know the history. He doesn't know anything about Palestinians, and he doesn't really care to understand anything about Palestinians. I suspect that if you want history, that he's thinking about, it's not Palestinian history, it's American history. He's thinking of what happened to Native Americans, who were almost entirely wiped out so that their land could be seized. But if he believes that this is possible, then he doesn't understand the region. Yesterday, his press secretary, after the international outcry which you mentioned, was saying, well, this is a temporary arrangement. Well, anybody who knows the history of the region will know that Palestinians aren't going to take that seriously for a moment, because for the last 75 years, Palestinians have been repeatedly told when they're chased off their land by violence that it's temporary, and they're never allowed to go back ever. And they know it. So, when a Palestinian person hears an American president saying, we're going to bomb you out of your land, but it's only temporary, they know it's permanent, because the history tells them that it's permanent.
Prof, please locate this proposal within the context of a two-state solution, which is the widely accepted, path forward towards a lasting peace in the Middle East. It tears it to shreds, doesn't it?
Well, of course. But, a two-state solution very often is what, people in the West talk about if they want to not deal with the problem, because clearly Palestinians cannot have a state when you're bombing them off their land and chasing them off their land. And you see, what a lot of the commentators are ignoring is that, the two-state solution, if it was ever on the table at all, hasn't been on the table for ages. Netanyahu makes it absolutely clear he's not interested in a Palestinian state. Trump has never given any indication that he thinks that a Palestinian state's a good idea. So what we've done is moved from a situation in which the attitude was, well, the Palestinians can't have most of the country they used to live in, but we'll give them a Bantustan, which is really the two states response, to Netanyahu and his people, who say, well, we're not even going to give them their own state, because if we give them their own state, then they might threaten us, etc. So Netanyahu has said on more than one occasion that he's devoted his political career to making sure that there is no two-state solution. So if in America or Europe you claim to be in favor of a two-state solution, and you're still supplying weapons to Netanyahu, then you're being entirely hypocritical, because you're claiming to support one thing and you're arming the man who says that he's trying to destroy what you support. So, the whole idea behind what Netanyahu is doing is to make sure there's never a two-state solution. And, when America and Britain support this and the rest of Europe, then they're engaging in hypocrisy, because they're saying they want one thing, but then they're allowing the Israelis to do quite the opposite.
Yeah, so it's been quite an extraordinary week, Prof, and I wonder if I can just ask you to weigh in on the comments that Trump has made about South Africa, and talking about South Africa confiscating land, doing some terrible things, horrible things to certain classes of people, as well as the role therein and sort of the support, if not goading, that he's been getting from Elon Musk.
Look, I think two things on this which are tremendously important. The first one is that, even by, Trump's politics have always been a kind of dog whistle racist. In other words, you believe that black people are inferior, but you don't actually say it. Well, that's changed now. Now he just says it. And he's been doing this over and over again in the U.S. When people die in a plane crash, it's because white men weren't in charge of the arrangements. When there are fires in Los Angeles because of climate change, it's because, there weren't enough white men in charge. So this has become central. And once it becomes central, it's pretty unrealistic to expect this country to be unscathed, because this country, whatever else may be wrong with it, is a country which defeated apartheid. He's trying to bring apartheid back. The other thing which I've been writing about, which I find very interesting, is that the tactics of racism have changed, and I do discuss this in that book you mentioned that I wrote recently, and that's that previously racists used to say black people are inferior. Now they say, we are the victims. We are the victims because you have allowed black people and women and other people who are not white to progress. And when you do that, you're taking away our rights to be white. So he doesn't say in South Africa, although he did say that once, that the problem is the places run by black people and black people are incompetent. He says whites in South Africa are being persecuted because they're not being allowed to rule over black people.
Wow. Prof, thank you. I've got to thank you for your time. That's Professor Stephen Friedman. He's research professor in the Humanities Faculty of the University of Johannesburg, but also the author of the book Good Jew, Bad Jew, Racism, Anti-Semitism, and the Assault on Meaning. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines. Parliament's presiding officers say all the former presidents have confirmed the attendance of the 2025 State of the Nation address in the Cape Town City Hall this evening. Former President Jacob Zuma's bid to privately prosecute his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is likely to reach its finality in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The private prosecution was invalidated in July 2023. And the SADC chairperson and Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa says the Democratic Republic of Congo has been unstable for a very long time. He says dialogue is needed to find lasting peace in that country. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The route to avoid this morning is to run through Galulis, whether you're coming up from Alberton, Germiston, or you're coming in from the Edenvale, Kinder Park, Boksburg, Benoni side. So it looks like a truck is overturned on the flyover from the N12 west to the N3 north. So instead of 2 lanes, you're down to a 1-lane scenario, and that's really heavy. The N12 is pushing back to Craft Road, the R24 backing up past Barber Road, and that truck then dropped its load, what appears to be Heineken beer, on the N3 northbound underneath the flyover. So the N12 and R24 routes into the truck crash are heavy, and the N3 into the broken glass, well, that's backed up already heavily past the cement factory and right back to Elan's interchange, and it does look particularly bad. So if you're on your way from the southern areas for flight connections, think about a reroute down the N17 and then take Rondebolt Road, go up through Boksburg and Jet Park and into the airport that way this morning. Breakdown at Ashburton if you're leaving Pietermaritzburg on your way to Durban, that's slow. Cape Town, won't be surprised if I tell you about the sand on Baden-Powell because of the strong winds in the last 24 hours or so. Baden-Powell at Coastal Park and at Monwabisi, both with patches of sand. And the N2 staying closed between Krabo and Bot Rafia, protesting there this morning, again in the usual place. So you've got the option of an extended travel time, either via the Leersdorp to the north or R44 Clarence Drive via Betty's Bay and Claremont to the south. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. So Mamelodi Sundowns, Masandawana, making light work of their rivals in the Tshwane Derby.
Absolutely, Thulas. I think with Sundowns playing like this, should we say that the league title race is starting to look like a one-horse one, and that horse is wearing yellow?
I don't know, hey? I think you'll have a few of the teams behind them saying, hey, anything is still possible at this point.
You got that right.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, the score may be 3-0 over SuperSport United. That was Mamelodi Sundowns at the Lucas Moripa Stadium last night. The result for Sundowns secured them with goals from Jaden Adams, Tashrik Matthews, 2, ensuring the Brazilians retained a 6-point lead at the top of the log over Orlando Pirates ahead of the pair's Crunch League meeting this coming weekend. Now, as for Masansansa, their 4th successive league defeat leaves them in 12th place on the standing, 4 points off the top 8. But let's hear now from Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoza.
Not for us. I think we show full respect.
If you think that we have 2 months of work in the team, if you think that today in the game there were lots of young players that played and also players that just arrived in the club, we must believe that there are lots of steps to be given. I believe that the team has to grow, the team will grow. That doesn't mean that we are not in a good place in the moment. We've been sustained the attitude by the results we could get. That gave us a good start and gave us the energy to proceed.
Let's go to the Orlando Pirates head coach, Jose Rivero. They're saying they're going to keep piling on the pressure on Sundowns as the league title race continues to intensify. Rivero is speaking after watching his team grind a result last night. They narrowly beat stubborn Sekhukhune United 2-1 at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. Rivero says they were up against a formidable opponent in Babina Noko.
Not for us. I think we show full respect for our opponent. Sekhukhune is an excellent side. If you are not coming here prepared and with your best performance, you are not collecting points. They used to give us always a tough game with a good crowd. It's always, gives you an extra boost to run when you are playing in your home. So not at all. Not even with the 2-0. There was not even a moment in our minds to say, okay, now it's time to rest anyone. It's one game at a time if we want to be in the position where we want to be, and in that sense was not difficult to prepare the match.
Now, TS Galaxy and Polokwane City kept their respective unbeaten runs, playing to a 0-0 draw at Mbombela Stadium. And in a match that spanned over 2 days, Chippa United had a 4-1 victory over Magesi FC at the Seshego Stadium. Elsewhere, Newcastle reaching the Carabao Cup final for the second time in 3 seasons after a 2-0 semi-final second leg win over Arsenal, contributing to a 4-0 aggregate victory. In the meantime, the number 2 seed Paula Badosa knocked out in the second round of the Abu Dhabi Open by Linda Noskova. That was 6-4, 6-1. And finally, cricket, Sunrisers Eastern Cape cruising to victory by 32 runs in the eliminator against the Joburg Super Kings at Centurion last night. We'll have all these details and more sports stories at the top of the hour. For SAFM, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela for the first business update of the morning. Ndauling, in news, M&A news coming out of the automotive sector, tell me about Nissan. It looks like they are getting cold feet in a way and sort of wanting to walk away from this merger talks with Honda.
Morning, Thulas, and that's right. So reports from the Nikkei newspaper saying Nissan has reportedly abandoned merger talks with rival Honda. The proposed tie-up would have created the world's third largest car maker, but its collapse, or rather potential collapse, raises concerns about Nissan's ability to navigate the industry's challenges alone. And now the merger talks announced last year aimed to create a bulked up entity to counter threats from China's BYD and other EV entrants, but sources familiar with the matter revealed growing differences between the two companies, including Honda's proposal for Nissan to become a subsidiary rather than partners. Now, this development raises fresh questions about Nissan's ability to ride out its current crisis without external help. Now, the company, before those tie-up talks, was in a midst of a turnaround plan involving 9,000 job cuts and a 20% reduction in global capacity. Analysts suggest that control was a contentious issue, with Honda increasingly worried about Nissan's progress on its turnaround plan. Now, the collapse of the potential merger talks just highlights the challenges facing Nissan as it navigates the challenging automotive landscape.
Staying with issues in that sector, tell me about Ford warning about its performance in 2025.
Now, the automotive industry, Thulas, including Ford, is bracing for a challenging year ahead due to market headwinds and potential tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. Analysts have been warning that the industry is in trouble, and Ford's recent guidance suggests that the company is taking a cautious approach. Despite this, Ford reported a net income of $1.8 billion in its fourth quarter, a turnaround from the net loss of $526 million in the same period last year. However, the company's guidance for the year is more subdued, citing a 2% industry-wide price drop and lower wholesale sales. Interestingly, this forecast does not account for potential, or rather additional, tariffs from the Trump administration, so there's a possibility that the outlook could worsen moving forward. Now, to navigate these challenges, Ford is prioritizing cost reductions, aiming to slash material and warranty expenses by $1 billion in 2025, following a $1.4 billion reduction in 2024. This effort is part of the company's ongoing strategy to boost its financial performance and stay competitive in a changing market.
All right, lastly, Ndauling, please give us a recap of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
So global stocks rebounded yesterday, extending gains for a second consecutive day as investors shrugged off earlier trade tensions. The Dow Jones making the biggest gains in the U.S., closing just over 0.7% higher. Things quite different here at home, with sentiment mixed ahead of tonight's SONA. We will be getting an update on the country's economic reforms. With that, the all-share closed trade 0.18% higher. The Rand rand, however, shrugging off local risks, trending stronger following dollar weakness. It's sitting at 18.57 to the greenback. And then over in Asia, markets are trading mostly higher following the broadly positive cues from Wall Street overnight as concerns over a global trade war started somewhat easing despite the tit-for-tat measures we've been seeing between the US and China.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back with the second update of the morning, and that's coming up just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief.
Our story is a South African story.
Anchored in the belief that it takes all of us to build a country that thrives.
To educate our children for a brighter future. To care for our health and well-being.
To nurture our environment to sustain future generations. And to transform and build a stronger nation.
When no one is left behind. Inspiring each other to succeed. Anglo-American.
Reigning champions and log leaders Masanda Wana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Korkop. But the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzanti's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Choosing something to watch shouldn't feel like a full-time job. Scrolling, second-guessing, and landing on the same comfort show just to dodge the "you started without me" chat with Bay. Here's something that's actually faster than choosing a show. Getting your car covered online with Santam. It takes just 2 minutes. To switch, visit santam.co.za. Santam, this is freedom.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the Morning Brief.
So we touched on this story about 2 weeks ago or so. This was the process coming out of Parliament. The country's major banks had to answer to lawmakers in Parliament on Tuesday over their conduct, alleged discriminatory practices, banking costs, and the lack of transformation, among others. The South African Reserve Bank, its Prudential Authority, the Banking Association of South Africa, Financial Sector Conduct Authority, Standard Bank, FNB, ABSA, Investec, Nedbank, and Capitec all attended the joint sitting of the Standing Committee on Finance and Trade, Industry and Competition Portfolio Committee. Let's welcome into the conversation Joe Maswanganyi, who is chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. From when we were doing the preview and previewing what you were setting out to do as the various committees in Parliament, you were saying that you wanted to get to the bottom of the what appears to be discriminatory practices, particularly in relation to lending. Do you believe you achieved your objective from the hearings that took place on Tuesday?
Good morning, Thulasizwe and listeners. As you have said in your introduction, that we're looking at those critical issues of transformation, that is the ownership, the inclusion, access to credit, procurement, and of course the issue of discrimination when it comes to lending. And in the main, we relied on reports that come from regulatory bodies, the FSCA, the Prudential Authority, the FSTC, and of course BASA presented. This was the first meeting that we have had in this term of office. We are also going to invite other sectors in the financial services sector, so that at the end we write a report to Parliament as to what can be done. And when it comes to discrimination, there is a report that we got from the Secretariat of the Office of the Disclosure, from Human Settlement, and as well as the FSCA, which outline the challenges that South Africans and bank clients are facing in that regard.
So let's tease out some of the aspects. When it comes to issues of transformation, the Banking Association gave you a presentation and talked about the extent to which many of the banks actually are at level 1 in terms of their, compliance with relevant laws such as BBBEE. Were you satisfied?
No, we were not satisfied by the report of BASA, because when we dug further for BASA to give explanation, if they talk about the transformation which is there, we acknowledge the progress. Not that we don't acknowledge that there is progress from 1994. We do acknowledge. But BASA could not come out to say if this is 100% of FNP, Van Tonner owns so much, Buthelezi owns so much, and give us that breakdown in terms of ownership. That is very, very critical. Rather than come to Parliament and say we have reached a level 1, but who are the actual owners of the banking sector? That's what is very important, and they are going to give us that explanation in writing.
The other aspect had to do with the lending practices. Let's talk firstly, before we turn to rates for home loans and the likes. You also got explanations from the various banks about how much they've lent to small and emerging enterprises, many of them black-owned. Standard Bank, for example, telling you 12 billion rand to its 460,000 small enterprise clients, many of whom are black-owned. FNB telling you about 50 billion rand funding to 229,000 women-owned businesses. Was that satisfactory for you? That element that talked to lending for production versus lending for consumption?
We acknowledge that. However, if we go back to the season to 2020, 2021, when the country and the world was hit by COVID, government introduced what we call a COVID-19 loan guarantee scheme to assist businesses in distress. And that guarantee scheme was almost 200 billion, if I'm not mistaken. What is surprising is that banks were reluctant to dispense money in that regard. Only 18.4 billion was lended to businesses. And today, so many small businesses have collapsed that were there, and it has led to the loss of jobs to almost 2.2 million South Africans. There are quite a number of issues, of course, that they've raised, that they're doing. We do acknowledge that, but we believe that they can do more, because the banking sector, with an amount of 6 trillion, which we believe can be invested in a productive economy, agriculture, industrialization, IT, and the like. We have got a huge problem of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And this sector, the financial sector as a whole, has got 21 trillion, which they have worth of assets. And we believe that if this 21 trillion, or part of it, can be productively invested in the economy, it will be a huge boost to the economic growth. So we can't be complaining about economic growth when money is there. Remember, this money does not belong to the banks. It belongs to the clients. It belongs to the workers. So why don't you reinvest the money that belongs to the people?
So lastly then, what happens now? You've had the hearings. What's the next stage of this process that you are undertaking?
Of course, we had the hearing, and as you have said before, that there's an issue of discriminatory lending. On this issue, we have got the problem of the lending patterns and the practices of the financial services. For instance, blacks or previously disadvantaged, in the main, on average, they are given a loan of 527,000 compared to 2.5 million for whites. So access to mortgage finance is a problem. The lending practice is a problem. They prefer to give blacks depreciating assets loan as compared to mortgage loan. That is problematic. So we are going to invite the other sectors, not subsectors within the financial sector, the insurance, financial service providers, is quite a very big sector. Then at the end, we call for a summit and then compile a report to Parliament that will outline what we are recommending.
Right.
But the issue of transformation, lending, and the charges that clients are facing is something that has to be addressed as soon as possible.
Thank you for that. That's Dr. Joe Maswanganyi. He is chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance in Parliament.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Avoid Galuli's interchange this morning. That's our advice. The truck has crashed on the N12 westbound ramp to the N3 North in Galuli. So you're down to a single lane on that ramp to take you up to the N3 North. And there's a very heavy backlog. The N12 to Craft Road, R24 marching back halfway towards Barbara Road. Some very significant problems. And that truck overturning and then dropped its load of glass beer bottles onto the N3 North underneath that bridge. So some very heavy impact there as you drive up into that clearance from sort of Elan's interchange around from Germiston, Alberton. Big traffic there. Just trying to avoid Galuli's. It really is a super heavy super jam of a Thursday morning. N1 pretty slow from Brockfontein all the way down to New Road today. And if you use the Mobile Party Highway, factor in some significant queue times from Theo Martins all the way down to Bremer Street. You are going to be asked to sit in some very heavy stuff there. Pietermaritzburg to Ashburton, stationary truck getting in the way, so there's quite a heavy backlog there. Just outside Cape Town, Grabo, Botreffer, the N2 protesting again this morning. That section of the National Road closed. It'll see you diverted and extend your travel times. Either go via the Lears door or take the R44 Clarence Drive. And don't forget, it's obviously State of the Nation data. We won't let you forget that here at SAFM. But obviously there's closures already in place around City Hall, so that's going to be busy for CBD traffic. But the big one is this afternoon, 5:45 in the afternoon, right through for a couple of hours plus until 8 p.m. Hospital Bend going into Cape Town City Centre will be closed. That'll cause major disruption. If you've got to be in late afternoon, early evening, make sure you're avoiding Hospital Bend and associated routes and getting onto some alternatives. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5.
This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be.
Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
6 minutes to 7 on this Thursday. The decision by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamuluku Gubai, to publicize the National Register for Sex Offenders at the end of February has been welcomed by most stakeholders. However, some advocacy groups have warned that the effectiveness of the register depends on how it is implemented, its publication, that is. Let's speak now to Advocate Brenda Madumise, who is the director at Wise for Africa and also a GBV activist, an anti-GBV activist. Good morning to you, Advocate, and thank you for your time. So this is something that comes out of a push of many, many years by various civil society organizations. Is this a step to be welcomed for the National Register of Sex Offenders to be publicized?
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Yes, I think, it's a step in the right direction. I think when 3 years ago, when the three bills came before Parliament and the National Sex Offenders Register came up for review, and many civil society organizations pushed for the register to be public, Parliament did not understand why that was important, right? And in fact, what we are advocating for was a register that is inclusive, right? At the moment, what that register has is a register for offenders who offended against children and mentally disabled individuals, right? So if you are a school principal or you are you conduct a early childhood learning center, you can access that register. However, the process to access it is long and tedious. By the time you get a response from the Justice Department for those responsible for it, it's a year later, right? So it did not serve the purpose that it was intended for. So going public now, what is key is so they have not shared with us the process that you need to follow. So it's good that you can see who's on the sex offender register. As a parent, you also can see, and if your child is in a particular school, you can then demand answers from the principal and find out if they have checked that name against the register, right? So it gives parents and everybody and others really the opportunity to hold certain institutions accountable, right?
Yeah.
But the bigger picture is for that register to be all-inclusive of all sex offenders,
Yes,
right?
say a bit more about that. So from what I'm picking up, part of what you would like to see as a build on from this process, the current process, is for sex offenders beyond the ones that committed offenses against children and mentally disabled people. You would want more names to be added to that.
Absolutely, and that's the bigger fight that we must engage in, and the minister to start listening and to all of us, those who have been pushing for this register to be broadened, so that there's an appreciation of why that is important, right? Because part of why the register exists, it's also served as a deterrent, right? Because when you don't want to, when you realize that you're going to be out into the public, and people can get to know that you are a sex offender. Remember, most people don't follow the court processes. They don't know who gets convicted of a sexual offense, right? But the register can assist us and to get to know who is on that registry or register, and you can inform others to be aware that this individual is a sex offender, and what measures do you put in place in a particular community to protect yourselves against a sex offender, and so you arm us as citizens, you arm us as activists to be able to take the fight and ensure that we hold offenders accountable and that they change their ways, and when I say a deterrent is because no one wants to see themselves publicly being seen as an offender, and I think you start to see behavioral change because you don't want to find yourself in that position.
Yeah. All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Advocate Brenda Madumise, who is the Director at WISE for Africa, also an anti-gender-based violence activist. So a key step taken following years of agitation by some segments of civil society. Of course, much of the focus now is on the modalities of how exactly the publication of the National Register of Sex Offenders is going to take place. The understanding is that initially it will be availed to institutions such as schools and the likes, schooling community and the likes, for them to be able to check names against that. And that brings us to 7 a.m. Let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, preparations finalized for the State of the Nation address and Zuma's bid to privately prosecute Ramaphosa back in court. Good morning. Parliament's presiding officers say all the former presidents have confirmed their attendance of the 2025 State of the Nation address in the Cape Town City Hall this evening. The address is government's health check with a clear set of plans and priorities laid out to achieve certain goals. Today's SONA will be the first delivered under the 7th Administration's Government of National Unity. The National Assembly Speaker, Toko Didiza, told the media in Parliament yesterday that preparations had been finalized.
We also have dignitaries who will be in attendance, as it is always with SONA. Our former President of the Republic, our former Deputy President of the country, former Speakers of the National Assembly, former Chairpersons of the National Council of Provinces, and former Deputy Speakers of the National Assembly, and former Deputy Chairpersons of the NCOP, also the Executive Mayor of the City of Cape Town.
Meanwhile, the National Association of School Governing Bodies says it expects the President to indicate that all parts of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act will be fully implemented. Matakanye is the governing body's General Secretary.
We expect him to indicate very clearly that Bella Bill as signed into law, all parts must be implemented fully, and there must be no contradictions. It must just be implemented as it has been signed.
Former President Jacob Zuma's bid to privately prosecute his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is likely to reach its finality in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The private prosecution was invalidated in July 2023. The matter has been on the court's criminal roll pending appeals. The latest appeal in the Constitutional Court was refused. This after the court found no reasonable prospects of success on the merits of the case. Kenny Mapanga reports.
Former President Zuma sought to privately prosecute the incumbent over the alleged leak of his health records in his corruption trial before the KZN High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Zuma accused his successor of being an accessory after the fact in the alleged leak. The former president's latest failure to revive the private prosecution bid may bring this chapter to a close, as the matter is likely to be removed from the criminal court roll on Thursday.
SADC chairperson and Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa says the Democratic Republic of Congo has been unstable for a very long time. He says dialogue is needed to find lasting peace in that country. Tensions are high in the eastern part of the Congo following fierce fighting between the M23 rebels and the DRC army. 14 South African soldiers were killed in the fighting and their bodies are yet to be repatriated. Mnangagwa says a central government is also needed in the DRC.
One would want to see a central government that is in full control of that vast country. That's the first step, I think. Currently, you have various authorities speaking differently in the same country. I don't think that is the best to have in a sovereign country. We meet as both SADC and the Eastern community. We will probe that question and see whether it is possible to make sure there is one voice in one country.
And finally, Sweden has been mourning the victims of the country's worst mass shooting. A man gunned down 10 people in an adult education center. Families of the deceased and wounded have been placing flowers and candles outside the center in Örebro. Swedish media have named the suspected gunman as Rickard Andersson. He was an unemployed 35-year-old who apparently shot himself. Recapping the top story, Parliament's presiding officers say all the former presidents have confirmed their attendance of the 2025 State of the Nation address in the Cape Town City Hall this evening. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
February could be the month to celebrate love and savings on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting west of Joburg, looks like protesting this morning. I believe this might be a protest over potholes that are not being attended to, Leratong and Kagiso. So a lot of traffic disruption out that side. The other side of Joburg, we take you to the East Rand area, the N12 and R24 truck crash at Galuli's. Very heavy delays, avoid those. That truck that crashed on top of Galuli's has lost its load on the N3 North, and that's a very heavy backlog still out of Germiston and Alberton this morning. Looks like a truck has broken down at Cliffdale. There's a very heavy delay that's popping up from Key Ridge on your way to Pietermaritzburg. You know how badly backed up that can be. The N2 is pretty busy this morning. Toti through towards Prospect. And just outside Cape Town, the N2 closed between Grabo and Botrafia. That's due to some protest action. There'll be some delays, diversions out that side. Road closures in the CBD around the City Hall precinct. They went in at 5 o'clock this morning. Routes like Hanover Street, the old Kaiservrak through District 6 is closed. Parts of Darling Street, a very busy road around Grand Parade in front of City Hall, also closed, and those closures until midnight tonight. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it is soccer action. Orlando Pirates edging Sekhukhune United 2-1, keeping the title hopes alive ahead of their Sundowns showdown. And in cricket action, the Sunrisers Eastern Cape, they cruised to victory by 32 runs against the Joburg Super Kings. All the details around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 8 minutes after 7 on this Thursday. It's good to be in your company. We're into the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. Let me tell you what's coming up over this hour. Well, we'll be talking a bit about two issues that are coming out of the Kingdom of Lesotho. One is the newly reinvigorated debate, particularly in the Kingdom's parliament, about the possibility of the kingdom reclaiming some land that it lost to South Africa in the 19th century or thereabouts. So there's this motion that was tabled, I think, about 2 years ago. It seems now that debate is firmly back on the table, and if there were to be such a claim, it would include the entirety of the Free State as well as parts of KwaZulu-Natal. But the other element that I want to talk to has to do with that country's government asking the South African government to basically consider interventions to assist Basotho citizens who are traveling into South Africa, particularly on issues of traveling while undocumented migration, the number of days that Basotho get to be in South Africa. Those two issues in a moment. I'll be talking to Jose Makubakube, who is on standby to talk to me. Then I'll talk to the authoritative commentator, Peter Attard Montalto. I mean, when Peter speaks, the capital markets listen. So you want to hear what he has to say about Donald Trump's comments about South Africa, the comments that were made a few days ago. But importantly, beyond just the comments themselves, you want to hear what Peter has to say about South Africa, what the comments mean for South Africa's navigation of a changing international landscape, as well as attempting to build new global alliances, as well as, of course, our economy and what investors hear about South Africa. So those are two of the main stories that we will cover, especially in this half hour. But of course, you are an integral part of this conversation. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll also take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere, for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Don't miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million rand daily lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 rand, play daily lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on National Lottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
11 minutes after 7. Let's start this hour with this story. A motion by some Lesotho lawmakers for the kingdom to reclaim large parts of South African land, including the entirety of the Free State and parts of KwaZulu-Natal, is back on the table. Meanwhile, Lesotho is also asking the government of South Africa to consider interventions to assist Basotho traveling into and through South Africa to other countries by giving them extended days. Let's touch on those two stories. I'm joined by Khosi Makubakube, who is the coordinator of parliamentary affairs in Lesotho. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Let's start with this motion. It came up about 2 years ago, and then there was talk of it being filed with the United Nations, and now I see that the debate is firmly back on the table. Where does this stand at the moment? Is it merely a debate in Lesotho about the possibility of reclaiming some parts of South Africa, or is it something that has gone beyond and now has become a position of parliament and possibly even the government?
Thank you, good planning, and your listening. Thank you for inviting me. You are absolutely in your introduction. March 2020, Dr. The motion debated by the legislators reclaiming land in South Africa, which Dutch settlers seized from the mountain kingdom of Lesotho in the 19th century. And the motion proposes that Lesotho should reclaim all of Free State province and parts of Eastern Cape, Natal, Northern Cape, about 30 kilometers.
I'm sorry to do this. We are battling. The line cuts intermittently. Let me check two things with you. Do you have us on speaker, on loudspeaker on your side? If so, maybe hold the handset close to your ear and maybe try and move a little bit so that we get the full benefit of this conversation. Let's give it another take. You were giving me the extent of the claim that is envisaged. Khosi Makubakube? All right, we do seem to have lost him there. Let's try and get him on a better line because, I mean, it's an important conversation that has gotten many people debating it. In fact, from when it was first raised in 2023, this possibility of Lesotho possibly reclaiming parts of South Africa. He was mentioning the number of provinces. Let's pick up with Khosi Makubakube. Good morning to you once again. We lost you there a little bit, but pick up where you left off. You were talking about the extent of the possible and envisaged claim that is being debated. Khosi Makubakube, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you now. Yes, please go ahead. You were telling us about the provinces and the extent of the possible land claim.
Yes, absolutely. The motion proposes that Lesotho should reclaim all of Free State province and parts of Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Northern Cape, about 130,000 square kilometers. And the basis for this motion is the case of 1962, which is the United Nations resolution that recognized the right to self-determination and independence of people of Lesotho. And that was the basis for the motion. And the motion was debated and it received negativity. It means it never passed. And not because the legislators and the government of Lesotho is not interested on the issue, but the approach of Dr. Dipulu, who proposed the motion, was actually unacceptable, because there has never been a time where the heads of both states had sat down to talk about this. Lesotho has never initiated this to South Africa. And to have it now debated in the parliament, which if it had received positivity, it was going to become a parliamentary resolution to the government, and the government would be obliged now to act. And on the basis of that, it was never accepted. It was rejected completely. Therefore, it cannot be claimed to be the position of the government or the position of the parliament.
I see. So right now, as it stands, it's not a position of the government, and it didn't pass in parliament. But is there still desire to, because you're saying the main problem was the approach that it was taking, whereas a better and more desirable approach is firstly engagement between the leaders of the two countries. Is there still desire to go down that particular path? Jose Makubakube? Yeah, no, we seem to be battling with that line, but I think we got the gist from what he was saying there. I don't know if we'll be able to, perhaps it's something we can come back to in the coming days, weeks and so, because it has caused a bit of debate. I mean, he was talking about the full extent of it. I realized as he was answering that I was downplaying it, mentioning just the Free State and KwaZulu-Natal. He mentioned parts of the Northern Cape as well as the Eastern Cape being part of the extent of a possible claim, but he, of course, emphasized that this is not the position of the government of Lesotho because the motion did not pass in Parliament.
At Business Outsurance, ensuring your business is our business. Switch to Business Outsurance today, and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. Get affordable cover to protect your business against everyday risks. Get the best business insurance at the best price for your business. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Reigning champions and log leaders Masanda Wana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Klorkop. But the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzanti's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
19 minutes after 7. Donald Trump's decision to halt funding to South Africa over the land expropriation issue has triggered fierce debate, and I think that's an understatement. It's been a storm since the U.S. president first made the announcement about a few days ago. South Africa is navigating a changing international landscape and attempting to build new global alliances. As a result, these remarks raise questions about the broader implications for this country and its foreign policy, investor sentiment, and economic stability. Let's welcome into the conversation Peter Attard Montalto, who is the Managing Director and Global Lead for Capital Markets, Political Economy, and the Just Energy Transition at Kratham. Good morning to you, Peter, and thank you for your time, and thank you for making the time to have this conversation with us. So these comments by Donald Trump, naturally, as I say, have triggered a storm of debate, but what are the comments' implications for how South Africa navigates what is a changing international landscape, as well as, our attempts to seek new global alliances?
Well, it's a fascinating bit of game theory in science because for now we don't really know what Donald Trump wants from South Africa. It is not that clear at all. Why, for instance, he would want the expropriation bill changed. Obviously, it doesn't affect the U.S. citizens itself. This is not like the Mexico situation around drug trafficking and obviously illegal migrants moving across the border. It's not like the situation where they're trying to send back illegal migrants to other Latin American countries where threats worked and there were payoffs straight away. So it's a very interesting situation, I think, and I think we have to think about the Trump administration wanting to use South Africa as an example of trying to move a country to have a much more Western-facing foreign policy as one of the outcomes, for sure. And also think about, I think, the other things that the U.S. administration is interested in, such as terrorist financing. The Biden administration had a lot of problems with South Africa around terrorist financing issues as well. That's likely to come up as well. But really, this is pretty short, and I think this is going to be the hard thing for the government, knowing what to do in return.
Just pulling at one of the threads there, concerns about terror financing. When you say that, Peter, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about the concerns that have landed us on the FATF grey list, or are you talking about perceptions in the United States that it is easy for terrorist financing to flow from South Africa?
Both of those issues have come up before from the US. There have been lots of detailed discussions over the years between the US Treasury and African authorities on these points. Remember, South Africa is making great progress, probably going off the grey list this year. It's made huge regulation and implementing those around clamping down on illicit financial flows. So again, it's sort of to really pull this all together into exactly what Trump will want. But also, I think we need to not discount the fact that a large part of this is probably performative. You'll have seen the tweets overnight from Secretary of State Marco Rubio now saying he won't attend the foreign ministers meeting in Nasrec in a couple of weeks' time. Saying it's because South Africa is going after DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, because of its G20 agenda. There are some performative elements of this, which I think make it very hard for South Africa, and is why ultimately South Africa does need to stand its ground, I think, to a great degree, and not try and sort of buckle in the face of probably quite an uncertain onslaught.
So there's the diplomatic play, Peter, which you've just described. But what about the investment concerns, trade concerns, and what the markets beyond the United States, make of this diplomatic play that is going on between South Africa and the United States? How concerned should we be about the broader fallout as far as investment is concerned?
So it's really fascinating to watch the markets this week. The rand is actually stronger than it was at the end of last week, despite all of this blowing up. And I think it really shows actually that investors have come a huge way in the last decade around the expropriation bill in particular. Investors now understand that, yes, whilst the legislation is a little vague in some places, that can be dealt with through regulations, through the courts. I think investors fundamentally do believe that South Africa has the rule of law and has decent courts to deal with something like expropriation. Investors know also that you need an expropriation bill to do things like large complex infrastructure, and that every country has an expropriation bill. So investors are being remarkably calm, I think, and the threat, though, of potential tariffs, I think, and also the cut to funding, I think investors understand that value funding is a very small, excluding health for a minute, but is a very small part of things like climate funding that goes on in South Africa. Obviously in PEPFAR and the AIDS funding, that is a very significant chunk of the budget, about 20% of the AIDS budget in South Africa, but can be substituted by other sources of funding domestically and internationally. So yes, I think investors are being quite contained so far. That could change if tariffs are put in place against South Africa. But again, the share of trade from South Africa to the US is moderate. I think investors also in the last year have been more relaxed, for instance, about South Africa falling out of AGOA, understanding that South Africa has a pretty wide and diverse trade relationship with the rest of the world.
Given everything we've discussed, Peter, how much energy and perhaps even resources should the South African state, starting with President Cyril Ramaphosa when he takes to the podium later on this evening to deliver the State of the Nation address, but everyone else involved in the value chain over the coming days, weeks and months, how much energy should they be investing in better explaining and perhaps amplifying the explanation and demystification of the Expropriation Act, for example?
I think, there's certainly a fair amount of explaining that one can do, but ultimately I think we need to take the stance right that Trump and the administration knows full well the appropriation bill is not as dramatic as they are saying, and they're using it for their own purposes. So there's only so much explaining you can do on that front. But no, I think you're right. Some explanation has to continue to investors, to the international media as well. But I think really what people are looking for from SONA is a redoubling of efforts of the reform we talk about, right, around structural reforms to growth in South Africa, boosting employment in South Africa. All these things are going to help South Africa become competitive and trade more with other countries globally, not just the US. And ultimately, I think that's the best mitigant, from this sort of fire hydrant of being directed at South Africa from the US. So it's sort of the same, I think, remedy that we often talk about for South Africa. It's faster growth, more resilient growth, lower unemployment is ultimately the tonic.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights, Peter. That's Peter Attard Montalto there. He is the Managing Director and Global Lead for Capital Markets, Political Economy and the Just Energy Transition at Crotham. And, of course, the line there did fade a little bit here and there, but I believe we got enough of that conversation, enough of the benefit of that conversation with Peter there.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, so let's take one or two of your voice notes. Let's start with this one that is to do with the comments of the U.S. President Donald Trump. Sometimes I don't even know which of the comments because there are so many of them. So let's see. Every day we wake up to something new with Donald Trump.
Good morning, Thulas. Thulas, what Trump is doing is totally beyond racism. How can you take people from their country and go put them into other countries and give one race the whole Gaza Strip, the Jews? What you call that? Can we take United States people and go put them all over China? Thank you, bye.
Yeah, no, it's an extraordinary suggestion, as you heard there in our conversation with Professor Stephen Friedman. A bit earlier on when I was talking about the State of the Nation address, I said, for me, it seems the overarching priority is to try and get our public finances sorted out, because I've gotten the sense that everything else, we are wasting our time. We're not going to get anywhere with crime. We're not going to get anywhere with infrastructure development, with, service delivery, the water crisis, until we fix. Because I said earlier on, many institutions, it has almost become commonplace for many institutions to run out of budget before the end of the financial year. Let's hear what this person has to say about that.
Good morning. This is Paul from Stellenbosch. This is what I think the President should say in his SONA address. Cut the cabinet, cut crime, cut cadre deployment, cut BEE, cut red tape. Grow the private sector, grow the economy, grow jobs. Let's grow rich together. Thank you.
Cut, there says that listener there. Thank you for those inputs. We'll continue to take a bit more. I don't know about cutting the cabinet, and you know my views about the empowerment legislation in this country. I don't think I should reiterate that it is a mandate that flows directly from our Constitution. So you tell me how we cut what the Constitution commissioned us to do, but I don't want to get into that today. As far as cutting the cabinet, you have a government of national unity right now. Many political parties. Who do you remove? Which it's a tough one. Many parties spoke about cutting the fat as far as the cabinet is concerned. But now they are in government and, compromises, and it's give and take. Kamina Kawena, as they would say. 7:30. Let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structures says all its deployments are in place ahead of the President Cyril Ramaphosa's 2025 State of the Nation address in the Cape Town City Hall this evening. Former President Jacob Zuma's bid to privately prosecute his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is likely to reach its finality in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The private prosecution was invalidated in July 2023. And the SADC chairperson and Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa says the Democratic Republic of Congo has been unstable for a very long time. He says dialogue is needed to find lasting peace in that country. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Galuli's interchange should still be avoided, especially if you're on the N3 north from Germiston or Alberton, or on the N12 and R24 westbound routes coming in from Boksburg, Benoni, or in from the airport. Truck crash inside Galuli's interchange, the N12 west, R24 west into the N3 north is down to a single lane, and that truck losing its load on the N3 north, which is causing a big backlog right through to that Germiston, Alberton area. A lot of traffic around Honeydew, Rampark Ridge, out towards Sundowner and out through North Riding, Northwold, Sharon Lee. There's hardly a traffic light working in that part of Joburg, and the traffic are really busy this morning. Heading up to Pietermaritzburg, leaving Durban, a stationary truck at Cliffdale. Traffic parking back towards that Shongweni exit pretty quickly. It is very heavily backed up through there. The truck that was broken down at Ashburton is being cleared. Cape Town this morning, everything's pretty busy, including the M5 queuing up from Parkwood, Southfield, all the way through to the Coburg interchange area. And the N2 between Krabo and Botrafia remains closed. If you are travelling that side of Cape Town, either Clarence Drive via Claymont or Villiers-Dorp will be your alternative routes. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
So, Zai, in football, there's a showdown that's shaping up between Mamelodi Sundowns and Orlando Pirates, and both teams now, after last night's action, both teams go into that showdown buoyed by strong performances.
Absolutely, Tulas. I have a feeling that Mamelodi Sundowns were watching Orlando Pirates and Orlando Pirates watching Sundowns. It's who blinks first. That's what it feels like in this PSL encounter. Orlando Pirates, though, had a 2-1 victory over Sekhukhune United, narrowing the gap behind the long leaders, Mamelodi Sundowns. The Buccaneers, they struck early in each half before surviving. Quite a nervy finish. And last season we saw Sekhukhune, they completed a double over Pirates in the league. But this season, Bucks are showing some belief. They are launching a serious challenge for the league title, and coach Jose Rivero says that these results are giving them hope.
Absolutely. I think the team is giving reasons in every game. Even in the 2 matches that we lost against Stellenbosch, Cape Town City, we didn't deserve that result. But that's the beauty of the league. Sometimes, probably in these other 11 games that we won, probably there's other games that could easily finish with a draw, and we were lucky enough to get the result last week. Last game, for example, in the extra time. Today we have to suffer until the end to make it possible. This type of results, this type of or having the opportunity to win in places where usually you don't used to win, gives you an extra hope to say, we're going in the right way.
Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns cruised to a 3-0 win over their Tshwane Derby rival SuperSport United in their match at Lucas Moripe Stadium last night. Here's Sundowns coach Miguel Cardosa.
If you think that we have 2 months of work in the team, if you think that today in the game there were lots of young players that played and also players that just arrived in the club, we must believe that there are lots of steps to be given. I believe that the team has to grow, the team will grow. That doesn't mean that we are not in a good place in the moment. We've been sustained the attitude by the results we could get. That gave us a good start and gave us the energy to proceed.
Plenty of action as well. TS Galaxy Polokwane City keeping up their unbeaten runs. They played to a 0-0 draw at Mbombela Stadium. Now, in a match that spanned over 2 days due to power outages, Chippa United had a 4-1 victory over Magesi FC at the Seshego Stadium. Now, Newcastle, they reached the Carabao Cup final for the second time in 3 seasons after a 2-0 semi-final second leg win over Arsenal that contributed to a 4-0 aggregate victory. And tennis action, the number 2 seed Paula Badosa, she was knocked out in the second round of the Abu Dhabi Open by Linda Noskova, 6-4, 6-1. And cricket, the Sunrisers Eastern Cape cruised to victory by 32 runs in the eliminator against the Joburg Super Kings in Centurion last night. They remain on course for a three-peat of titles in the SA20. Sunrisers have little time to digest this win. They now move on to the second qualifier at the same venue today, this time against the Paarl Royals, with the winner facing MI Cape Town in the final at the Wanderers in Johannesburg. That's on Saturday. Sunrisers, put into bat by the Super Kings, compiled a 184 for 6, and that was due to an unbeaten 63 by Aidan Markram. The Super Kings finished on 152 for 7. Here's Aidan Markram.
But our bowlers have been really, really good for us, and from a batting point of view, our batters, we just haven't clicked the way we would have liked to, and before you know it, you're like 5 games in, and you're like sheepish, man, like kept playing catch up the whole time. But good signs tonight with the bat at least. Small things like that opening partnership goes a really long way for us, and then for some of us to spend some time out there and then to get to at least to 180 is a step in the right direction, at least for now.
Well, that's it. We'll end with cricket for now. We'll have more on the pitch at the top of the hour. For SAFM, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndauling. Ndauling, tell me in company news, tell me about SAPI and their return to profitability in the fourth quarter.
So they're back in the black. The pulp and paper manufacturer delivered a profit of $70 million from a loss of $126 million. This was mainly due to its turnaround strategy, which has focused on cost savings and operational efficiency gains. SAPI's CEO Steve Binney attributed the strong performance to the company's ability to adapt to challenging market conditions and its focus on delivering operational efficiencies. Binney also pointed to higher selling prices and sales volumes. The company said the return to profit is a significant milestone, demonstrating its ability to navigate a complex and challenging environment. Despite ongoing macroeconomic headwinds, SAPI remains confident in its ability to continue delivering value to its shareholders. Looking ahead, SAPI expects to continue benefiting from lower pulp input costs in the first and second quarter, although it anticipates that its earnings for the second quarter will be below that of the first and fourth quarter due to planned maintenance shutdowns at some of its mills.
So there's also news coming out of Sasol. Tell me a bit about that.
Another blow for Sasol shareholders, Thulas, the group warning of a profit hit for the half-year period. It expects earnings to be up to 36% lower than the previous comparable period. On a per-share basis, that's between 13 Rand and 15 Rand, compared with 20 Rand a year ago. Now, Sasol has cited many reasons for this expected performance, including a 13% drop in oil prices and decreases in refining margins and fuel price differentials. This decline was further worsened by a 5% decrease in sales volumes, resulting from lower production and declining demand. The company also reported non-cash adjustments, including a net loss of 6.2 billion rands from remeasurement items. Now, this is mainly due to an impairment of its Secunda and Sasolburg refineries. Despite these challenges, Sasol noted that the negative impacts were partially offset by an increase in average chemical basket prices, as well as the company's efforts to manage costs. More details on those numbers will be released when it's out with interim numbers on the 24th of February.
All right. Lastly, Ndauling, please give us another recap of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
So kicking things off in Asia, Thulas, stocks mostly in the green as a surprise reversal by the U.S. Postal Service on a parcel ban from China and Hong Kong boosted investor sentiment. With that, the Chinese Shanghai index is up 0.8%, and the Japanese Nikkei trading over 0.5% in the green. Looking at Wall Street, futures are in positive territory following yesterday's upbeat finish. Traders on that end still digesting tech earnings with focus on Alphabet and AMD's numbers. And then back at home, trade was quite mixed yesterday, with the JSE All Share closing 0.2% higher, but we saw losses in the Industrial 25 and the Financial 15. The Rand, in the meantime, holding up well this morning, sitting at 1857 against the greenback.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. Just before the resumption of trade on the JSE, just after 8:30 to 9 o'clock, within that gap, Ntauleng will come back once more to just give you a sense of what the markets will be looking like today.
Africa Update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning to you. So we've been hearing a bit from the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, specifically on the situation in the DRC.
Refreshing morning to that and Jumbo Africa. Indeed, to the issue of DRC will never cease from our tongues, and we're talking about that. Remember, I've once talked about Karim Khan, that has been following closely DRC since last year. So since October, he's been following it, and yesterday his office issued an agent call for any information that alleges on war crimes. Remember, as we are talking now, M23 has now seized the mining town of Mbimbwe, that is 100 kilometers from South Kivu. And as we know, Thulas, there are many people who have lost their lives, women being raped, and I think that's why ICC wants to step in. But that still calls Thulas, our African Commission on Human and People's Rights. It is still calling our courts in Arusha to say, what are we doing with these war crimes that are happening, rather than we still want to rely in the ICC. Karim Khan has been investigating Congo, I don't know for how long, Thulas, but we are not reaching any resolution.
Yeah. In news coming out of the African diaspora, tell me about, well, it seems Donald Trump is not just cutting any funding or flow of money to South Africa and USAID, but actually even the work that is being done by Kenya and others in Haiti, that's also going to be affected.
That is quite true. You know, Donald Trump, I think sometimes too, that he doesn't put priorities together. I think he's just excited for the second term, but others are saying the last chief of this racist president of the U.S. When you look to last year, has now issued a stop order of funding for the Kenyan-led Haiti multinational security support mission. This was under the Biden's era, where America was supporting the UN as well as to deal with the gangsters in Haiti. Now, Donald Trump is coming with a radical approach of cutting foreign aid to us, and we know even William Ruto, he thought he will bring the money back again in this mission, but it seems Donald Trump is putting America first and Haiti as the second, and they've benefited in the looting of Haiti as the U.S. for many years.
Yeah. Speaking of William Ruto, some, a bit of trouble for him in a sport of border, at least in Kenya, about his business dealings, those of his predecessor and others being exposed in this cyber attack.
Once you talk about cyber attack, you must know if you are doing things in the night, they will be exposed in the day. Now, here's a cyber attack that has affected even the First Lady Rachel Ruto, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, but this is in the business dealings. We'll wait what Uhuru Kenyatta said, what will William Ruto say to us, because these are serious economic crimes that have been leveled against the former president and currently the sitting president. There are some companies from South Africa to us who are also linked to this issue around how former presidents have been linked to many organizations dealing with what you can say, is it money laundering, is it investment? You don't know too much because there's always life after presidents. You always ask yourself why presidents are greedy in the African continent.
And in Namibia, moves to honor the late President, Dr. Haig Geingob, with a presidential center. Tell me a bit about that.
Just remember, actually, last year during this week on the 4th of February, the former president passed on. Now, yesterday, as they were unveiling the tombstone, and they were saying that they are going to set up a memorial center in his honor. That will include maybe presidential library where they will collect some of his books, because they are saying one of his ideas was to have his own library, his memoirs to share on the issues of leadership. So the government said this is not funded by the state, no taxpayers' money will be used. There will be some fundraising being used for this. The incoming President Thulas was there yesterday as well, Nandi, to honor the former president. We are talking about Nandi Ndaitwa and some of the government leaders at the Heroes 8 to honor the son of the Swell who passed away in 2024 in February 4th.
So when I leave here, Sipho, I'll be playing Bob Marley, War, until the philosophy which holds one race superior and another inferior is finally discredited and abandoned. Everywhere there's war. And there's a reason for that. Tell me about what happened on the 6th of February, 1945.
Thulas will have been 8 years. Robert Nesta Mali, the honorable rebel, who was born at the farm of his maternal grandfather in 9 Miles, St. Anne Parish, Kingston, Jamaica. Born from Noble Sinclair Mali and Sidela Malcolm. One of the granddaughters said as they are celebrating their father's 80th birthday, Thulas, the Bob Marley Museum today will be hectic with events from drumming and events. And they are saying the theme is uprising. That's where they will be focusing. Songs like Forever Loving Jah coming in from the cold redemption song to that. I think the role of reggae in the liberation struggle of Africa to that is still relevant. When you think of the war in Sudan, the war in the DRC, the message is in the music. Even the liberation of South Africa, it was through reggae music. And we need to remember, it's Reggae Month in Jamaica, and there is this honor of Robert Nesta Mali. Asante sana to that, that's what still observing the SONA, the State of the Nation of the 7th administration.
Raz Sipho Mantula, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update here on The Morning Brief.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
So it is 13 minutes to 8. Let's shift our attention to news coming out of, the education sector now. Boys are falling behind girls at every stage of school and are more likely to repeat a grade or even drop out. And this is according to new research that is coming from the University of Stellenbosch. The research has found that while roughly an equal number of boys and girls enroll for grade 10, by the time they reach grade 12, about 100,000 more girls are enrolled than boys. So let's bring into the conversation Servas van der Berg, who is the Director of Research in the Social and Economic Policy Unit at the University of Stellenbosch. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time this morning. So what accounts for this discrepancy, this what has been described as a gender gap, different from how you and I would ordinarily conceive a gender gap in broader society?
Yes, it's very difficult to exactly say why that is the case. We just to put one thing straight, it is equal numbers of boys and girls that start school, not in grade 10.
Not in grade 10,
then,
okay.
Yes, but then in grade 12, as you say, there are about 100,000 more girls. So about 430,000 girls versus 330,000 boys reach grade 12. So that is a big difference, and that difference, in fact, also continues at university, as we know from other research within our unit that has been done earlier. But the reason for this is not quite clear. We know that internationally, in developed countries, the pattern is that girls perform slightly better than boys, but it's this gap that we have is extremely large. So just to give you an indication, in grade 1, when one looks at the entry age of 5.5 years, if a boy in the Eastern Cape, the boy enters at 5.5 years, the probability is that he would have about a 31% chance of repeating the grade. For a girl, it's only 19%, 18% in fact. So if they wait a year longer, then the chances of the boy failing the grade would be about 15%, and for a girl it would be 8%. So again, we see quite large differences, and that differences also has gone through to grade 4. In grade 4 we find that learners who the boys generally are performing much worse than girls too, but particularly even if they have performed in the same level in their home language in grades 1, 2 and 3, and then they make the switch to English, the boys again have a bigger this deficit in terms of their performance.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. So what policy questions do the findings point to? What challenge do they pose for policymakers, given the broader responses to various deficiencies that have been identified across our education system? How do we address this particular aspect?
This is very difficult to find a clear policy that would be successful. To a large extent, we have such a weak performance of our school system as a whole that one should not necessarily focus on boys only. All those that are performing weakly should get that support if possible. Now, there are very many ways in which one can do that support, but we are struggling to find something that works for large numbers of children in our system. So the DBE has been trying to improve education for many years, and we've seen improvement. The improvements are not as rapid as one would want. And what one also sees is that there are these larger deficits that have then also a gender dimension to it. So my colleague, Dr. Gabrielle Wills, puts it nicely. She says one should focus on all children that are behind, not necessarily on boys. But regarding boys, we know that there is something called the emotional, socio-emotional learning, and that boys are again behind with that, and that has to do with one's attitude to school, one's attitude to doing difficult things, and so on. So that is part of the problem which one sees in South Africa in a very large scale.
All right. Thank you for your time and your insights this morning. Just one more element that we have to grapple with in as far as our schooling situation in our education system is concerned. That's Servus van der Berg, who is the Director of Research in the Social and Economic Policy Unit at the University of Stellenbosch.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still fairly heavy extreme delays, in fact, around Galuli's interchange. A truck crash on the N12, the flyover link to the N3 North. The N12's back to Jet Park, the R24 into the N12, backing up towards the Barber Road exit, and the N3 North getting caught up in that as well. Big delays out of Alberton and Germiston all the way through to Galuli's. Mike 1 is heavy this morning as well. Boyson's right through to Greyston Drive. It is a busy Thursday, lots of volume around. Queues on the N14, the Krugersdorp Highway just north of the Pretoria West, the R55 exit, so slow going on your way towards Brockfontein. Crash near the Petroport on the N1 north of Pumalani Plaza, causing a backlog, and some very heavy delays on the Mopani Highway. If you're leaving Shoshanguve on your way to work in Pretoria, you're going to be asked to sit in heaviness this morning, just approaching Bremer Street. It's really bad inbound, but there's also a queue going out as well. Breakdown at Cliffdale, so that's heavy from Key Ridge on your way to Pietermaritzburg. M13, Maytime Stores down Fields Hill, looking very slow as well at this hour, and a bit of traffic pressure going out of Durban on the N3 through Spaghetti Junction down towards Paradise Valley. Cape Town, a collision, Yipdiyaga and Ace Cricker, so that's causing delays that part of town, that sort of Lovenstein area. N7 both ways into Bosmansdam Road is heavily backed up north from Goodwood, south from Bladderkloof, and a crash on the N2 inbound just past the R300, causing a delay coming through from Khayelitsha. And just a reminder, the N2 between Krabo and Botrafia remains closed due to protesting. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
In terms of the ANC's response to what Donald Trump said, a lot of your thoughts around the response has been less to Trump, but more to AfriForum. Why so?
Because we know, and I'm sure you also know, that they have traveled to the U.S. in particular to speak about this very issue that Donald Trump is responding to. That's not being the first time that they had done so. We are responding to them in the main because they are South African. We should be able to work with each other in finding solutions to the South African problem.
Lindiwe Zulu, the ANC National Executive Committee member.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. Call Thulasizwe now 086 000 2032.
All right, 5 minutes to 8. Let's take some of your calls this morning. So a fellow South Africans moment is coming up fast a bit later on today when President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the State of the Nation address. Let's hear what one or two of you have to say about that. Ian, good morning to you. You want to talk about SONA?
Yeah, morning to SAFM and the listeners. Just a quick one. I'm actually concerned that the President this evening will put education at the highest level of his speech, because it is very important, because from grade R all the way to metric, that these children are given the best of the education, and especially the teachers are employed and taken care of, and their salary-wise, because at the end of the day, once the teachers are happy, the students and the children are going to be treated at their best, not just for the sake of it that I have to be there because I need an income. And knowing that these children are going to be the future of the country, in future leaders and future developers in creating jobs and so forth. So we need this as a serious matter. This is what will create employment and keep the country moving forward.
Gotcha.
You find in many countries in the world, they always treat education as the first thing for the citizens of the country, then follows everything else with it.
The apex priority. All right, Ian,
Yes.
thank you. Education, top of Ian's mind there, as far as the State of the Nation address is concerned. Michael in Durban, good morning to you. On your mind is the issue of budget allocations.
Yes, thanks very much, Travis. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I've heard you in the morning making a statement saying almost all department doesn't have money, and I think that has been repeated a lot. There's a shortage, but for me, I think there is a blanket statement from Treasury, because Kevin Kiswet is the SARS commissioner. The past 2 years, he has been indicating that she was tripling the amount he is collecting from SARS.
Yes.
And it was counted in trillions. Now, for example, if me and my wife, I'm getting paid, and I pay one item, then I said I don't have money, then one should go back and analyze your net salary and how you have spent it. I think it's a high time that our government become transparent and tell us where is actually our biggest expense going, because it cannot be that education is collapsing, healthcare is collapsing, and we're just given a mere statement being told there's no money. Where is this money that is being quoted from taxpayers? Right. And what's the point of quoting that money if the taxpayers now they're going to suffer what they also being stripped off via taxes? Do you see now?
Michael,
so to be very honest and just give us a transparent and open to say, how is this money allocated? How much the balance is left?
Right.
If we can get one-time finance ministers and spray this in open and transparent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Michael in Durban there. A part of that account, though, Michael, will be coming through when the budget is delivered. And I suspect you will be told a big chunk of that money goes to the debt that we have as a country, the massive debt that we have, as well as the costs of servicing that debt. Crispin in Durban, good morning. You want to talk to me about the so-called race-based policies?
Yeah, so what really gets me is to hear white people being indignant about race-based policies. So I spent a large part of my life under apartheid. I remember it extremely well. The number of white people who are actually calling for an end to these policies was really very, very few. And even some of those people didn't particularly mind being benefited by race-based policies. I never heard of a Mr. Musk, for example, South African, talking about his opposition to these policies. And do people just want to airbrush history away? Black people getting dumped on the land and the veldt to starve to benefit white people so they could get access to land being occupied by black people at the time. And so that kind of land theft, that grabbing of land grabs, these were land grabs on the basis of race-based policies. So now to pretend that this history never happened is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's a national imperative that we address the land issue. Look at how South Korea benefited once they actually instituted a really strong program of land reform. But the other thing that gets me is running overseas to try and get help from a crazed, unprincipled leader. This is a leader who has just announced that he is planning to expropriate the land of 1.8 million people in Gaza on the basis of ethnic cleansing and to remove their private property. Is this the kind of people that AfriForum wants to link up with? Afrikaners used to say about the British that they had one leg in Africa and one in the UK. AfriForum now has one leg in the USA and one in South Africa, and there's a very nasty term for people like that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. What a refreshing call from Crispin there. I have absolutely nothing to add. Sentiments of many exceptionally well captured there by Crispin. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news headline, latest news update.
In our top stories, Nat joins warning ahead of the State of the Nation address and Zuma's bid to privately prosecute Ramaphosa back in court. Good morning. The National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure NetJoint says all its deployments are in place ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address in the Cape Town City Hall this evening. The structure is responsible for coordinating all security and law enforcement operations throughout the country. It says the SAPS, State Security Agency and SANDF held regular meetings with the NetJoint structure in the build-up to the SONA. Police spokesperson Ethelinda Martes says disruptions will not be tolerated.
Any lawlessness, criminality or behavior that contravenes the law will be dealt with accordingly. We are thus confident that Thursday's evening's address will take place with minimal to zero incident. The NetJoint wishes to remind communities that the airspace around the City Hall will be restricted during the State of the Nation address for both manned and unmanned aircrafts. No drones will be allowed from 7 o'clock on Thursday morning until 10 p.m. later in the evening.
Meanwhile, Parliament's presiding officers say all the former presidents have confirmed their attendance of the SONA. National Assembly Speaker Doko Didiza told the media and Parliament yesterday preparations were finalized.
We also have dignitaries who will be in attendance, as it is always with SONA. Our former President of the Republic, our former Deputy President of the country, former Speakers of the National Assembly, former Chairpersons of the National Council of Provinces, and former Deputy Speakers of the National Assembly, and former Deputy Chairpersons of the NCOP, also the Executive Mayor of the City of Cape Town.
Former President Jacob Zuma's bid to privately prosecute his successor, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is likely to reach its finality in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The private prosecution was invalidated in July 2023. The matter has been on the court's criminal roll pending appeals. The latest appeal in the Constitutional Court was refused. This after the court found no reasonable prospects of success on the merits of the case. Kenny Mapanga reports.
Former President Zuma sought to privately prosecute the incumbent over the alleged leak of his health records in his corruption trial before the KZN High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Zuma accused his successor of being an accessory after the fact in the alleged leak. The former president's latest failure to revive the private prosecution bid may bring this chapter to a close, as the matter is likely to be removed from the criminal court roll on Thursday.
The Social Development Department has urged non-profit organizations, NPOs, to comply with registration requirements following the deregistration of over 6,200 NPOs. The department says over 200,000 organizations comprising of NPOs, voluntary associations and trusts face the risk of deregistration for failing to submit annual reports, which are a requirement under the NPO Act. The department's acting Deputy Director General of Welfare Services, Mpondle Tama, warns no compliance compliant NPOs will lose privileges such as tax exemptions as well as government funding and support.
When you are registered, it means that you are on the register of NPOs, and that means that anyone who wants to be associated, they would have an understanding that you are legally recognized as an entity, one, but also you are accountable and transparent because NPOs use public funds. Therefore, it is important for accountability and transparency so that anyone who funds NPO has got that trust and the belief that the money is being used for right purposes and intentions.
And finally, the SADC chairperson and Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa says the Democratic Republic of Congo has been unstable for a very long time. He says dialogue is needed to find lasting peace in that country. Tensions are high in the eastern part of the DRC following fierce fighting between the M23 rebels and the DRC army. 14 South African soldiers were killed in the fighting and their bodies are yet to be repatriated. Mnangagwa says a central government is also needed in the DRC.
One would want to see a central government that is in full control of that vast country. That's the first step, I think. Currently, you have various authorities speaking differently in the same country. I don't think that is the best to have in a sovereign country. We meet as both SADC and the Eastern community. We will probe that question and see whether it is possible to make sure there is one voice in one country.
Recapping the top story, the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure NATJOIN says all its deployments are in place ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address in the Cape Town City Hall this evening. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Where possible, still a good idea to avoid Galuli's interchange. N3 North, N12 West, R24 West, all very heavily backed up due to a truck crash incident. Crash recovery underway between Pumalani and Petroport. Looks like the run going north is currently closed there, so there's a backlog of traffic. In fact, it's a vehicle fire incident now, just north of Pumalani Plaza, so the N1 north to Polokwane currently closed. Mopani Highway stays heavy at Bremer. Lots going on in KZN around Durban this morning. The broken down truck's still with us at Cliffdale, so that's very heavy. There's a backlog getting up from Queen Nandi through Komashu on your way towards Gateway, as well as some delays on the M7 going into Pinetown from Hans Detman Highway. Cape Town, a crash involving a motorcyclist on the N2 inbound just past the R300. Traffic remains heavy coming through from Muway into that. And there's a big backlog again this morning on the M5. Very heavy backlogs from just around sort of Ottery all the way through towards the Kubo interchange. And just off the highway there, it's been a truck crash at the very busy junction of Voortrekker and Kuburg, right in the heart of Maitland. That's going to start to cut in and cause some problems. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headline, we'll have a chat with Kagiso Robada saying the hunger is there. And that's for MI Cape Town, who storm into the SA20 final. And we've got soccer action. Orlando Pirates edging Sekhukhune United 2-1, keeping those title hopes alive. All the details and more sport around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Yeah, it's just gone 9 minutes after 8. We are into the third hour of the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief. Good morning to you. It's good to be in your company. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. So we've put a lot of issues on the agenda over the last 2 hours, and the levels of engagement are just, they excite me. We've been talking, what else is new, about Donald Trump quite a bit. What's new? Every day, something new coming out from Donald Trump. But importantly, we did have that conversation with Peter Attard Montalto, just reflecting on what he believes is that it is really at play here in what Donald Trump has had to say. ever-changing international landscape and also South Africa's attempts to build a new global alliance. I found that conversation quite refreshing. He was talking about how, to a certain extent, international investors have come to accept what South Africa has been saying about how robust our internal checks and balances and systems are, such that what Donald Trump is describing is not the reality in South Africa. So as I found that to be quite refreshing. You can call in and weigh in on that if that's what is on your mind. But we've also been talking quite a bit about the State of the Nation address, which will be delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa a bit later on this evening. And we've been talking in particular about what you believe is the true state of the nation and what the priorities are and what the priorities should be and what should be pushed to the back burner. We did throw in a question for you that says, given the level to which we are all tightening our belts and, does the State of the Nation in its format still need to remain what it has been for many, many years? The, various arms of service, ceremonial guards marching on the streets of Cape Town, people coming on the red carpet with taking pictures and dressed up for the occasion, etc. I don't know if the flyover will happen of the Hawks and Gripens and the likes, or should it just be now curtailed as well and have President Cyril Ramaphosa coming to us from the briefing room at Union Buildings and just keep it simple and deliver the State of the Nation address, because the majority of South Africans actually catch it on TV and are not there for it. But, there are traditions, joint sitting of Parliament, I don't know. Weigh in on that as well, if that is what's on your mind. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll also take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a morning or a morning, you woke up like this or like this. Mornings love McDonald's. So choose happy and enjoy a short filter coffee for only 14.90 Rand at McDonald's. What's not to?
Don't miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million Rand Daily Lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 Rand, play Daily Lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million Rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old to play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere, for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
So you have heard our story to a large extent. Let's hear your story this morning. What's on your mind? Let's take a few of your calls and WhatsApp voice notes. Let's start with this one on the State of the Nation address.
Hi, good morning, Thulasizwe. Thulasizwe, for some odd reason, I just woke up with the feeling that Jacob Zuma accepted to be at the sauna. Maybe there is a plan to disrupt the sauna from the MK party or Jacob Zuma himself. I don't know, but I've got that feeling. Bob Cape Town, I might be wrong, yes, but I've got that feeling. And I thought I must just take it out there to the public.
No, I
Bob
hear
Cape Town.
No, thanks, Bob. Thank you for that. I don't know. Let's see what happens when the sitting actually starts. All I will say is that the public explanations of the MK party have been that in terms of how they conduct themselves, they don't want to be that party that's easily provoked. I remember, I think it was Advocate Dalimpofu who was making that point, if I'm not mistaken, or Mzwane Lemanyi. One of the two made the point that we've taken a conscious decision that we are going to be that party that if you provoke us, we will just walk away and continue to just make the points that we make. But I don't know. Let's see what happens when the event actually gets underway a bit later on.
Good morning, Bratulas, and to all SAFM listeners. Quite interesting what the chairperson has revealed there, that the previously disadvantaged are actually given more loans when it comes to depreciating assets. It makes you wonder that what is the narrative of these banks? Is it to keep the previously disadvantaged more disadvantaged, or what? This is TV from Middelburg.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's an interesting bit of work, and I must say, I think, the three committees, I think, were involved with this work. I think this is exactly what parliamentary oversight is about, right? So that the banks and other institutions that wield power come in and account, and they're scrutinized and the right questions are asked. So I absolutely can't fault them. But we'll have to see then, now that they've done this inquiry, how do they then take it forward? What comes next, I guess, for me, is the question.
Thulasizwe, good morning, and the listeners. Regarding Lesotho, I don't know if I heard you correctly when you say Lesotho government asked South Africa to give Lesotho people extended days, even if they didn't go out by the time they were supposed to go out. This is clear that all these other countries, they take South Africa for granted because South Africa is too lenient. It's Kosana in Bloemfontein.
Yeah, no, I get the point you are making, Wanaskosana, but I think from their perspective, South Africa has had special dispensations on immigration for one or two countries in the Southern African region. I know, for example, that the Zimbabwean case has been one that has been on the cards and basically in play for quite some time, including that ZEP. I suppose, and I think there was a special dispensation for Basotho as well. So I think it's along those lines that say, being a country that's completely within the borders of South Africa, we do need to, transit through your country. So if you are a Mosotho and you want to go, say, for example, to Namibia, you can't get to Namibia without going through South Africa if you are a Mosotho. And sometimes you find yourself having to transit and take a bit longer. And also the interdependence. I'm not justifying it. I'm just telling you that this is part of the basis on which I believe they could be making those requests. Thank you for those. We'll take a few more of your calls a bit later on and your WhatsApp voice notes. Keep them coming.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It is 18 minutes after 8. Let's turn to this story now. Postbank and the South African Social Security Agency will be issuing a joint statement this morning regarding the deadline for SASSA grant beneficiaries to replace their existing SASSA Gold cards with the new Postbank Black cards. The announcement will clarify issues around what happens when the card ceases to function. But let's get ahead of that and actually start the conversation. I'm joined now by Nikki Mbengashe, who is the Postbank CEO. Good morning and thank you for your time. Tell me a bit about why it is that these cards are expiring and what the implications are for beneficiaries who are currently on the SASSA Gold card at the moment.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm just catching my breath. I just ran up to
Sorry about that.
So excuse me from breathing a little bit heavy. So people do need to change their cards because, as with any card, your card, my card, cards do expire at some point, right? And I think Postbank has done well in trying to keep this because over, I think, the past 2 years, the card was supposed to expire probably 2 years back, but because we were not ready to change at the time because we had some systematic items that we had to take care of, and now we have done that. We've done great work in upgrading those. So the cards are ready, and therefore that's why we're replacing them. Sorry, geez, my breath. Okay.
Sure.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah. So then tell me about, obviously this is something that affects the livelihoods of millions of South Africans that depend on social grants. Tell me about the work that you've done to ensure that there's no disruption to the flow of social grants and people being able to access their grants even as you make this transition.
I think it went into the planning. I think first of all, we've been issuing cards for the past, 6 months. We started this in September last year. But I think because there was no sense of urgency, I think people felt because the yellow card is still working, why should I go and then exchange my card? But then, of course, now we're running out of that time. The 28th of Feb is here, and that card, the yellow card, will stop working, and therefore people have to come through. I think it should happen that by the 28th of Feb, some of our beneficiaries don't have the new card. We will have to come up with a plan. We'll have to come up with a plan to see how to ensure that people still have access to their grants. But even if we do that, that will be a short-term contingency that we'll have to put in place, because for the safety of the people and for compliance, people do have to have their new card. I think it's convenient for them. It gives them access to their funds quite easily. They don't have to queue. They can swipe at any retailer. They can swipe at retailer and actually get their cash if they want the cash. So it's actually better for them to actually get the black card.
So you understand the beneficiary universe and you have line of sight over this whole transition process. Do you expect that there will be people in that category that you just described now, people who come the 28th of February would not have transitioned from the current card to the new one? And how big a population do you believe that would be of your beneficiary universe?
So Postbank only distributes to about 30% of the total SASSA numbers. So I think firstly, let's get that clarity. It's not. This is not for all people who get their beneficiaries. Some of them do bank with other banks. We only have just about 3 million of those customers that do bank with us. We absolutely do foresee that there are people who might not have the opportunity or the chance by the 28th of Feb to get their card, and as a responsible bank, we have to make contingencies for such. At the moment, we're seeing people coming through as we're announcing this, but I think the more we emphasize the fact that the 28th is a deadline, people are going to get the sense of urgency that we need from them. So we're busy with the numbers now to kind of focus what do we foresee post the 28th, and therefore what will be the plan to ensure that no one is prevented from getting their grant. I think that's important for us.
Yeah, and I didn't get the number of the Postbank black cards that you've already issued. Are you satisfied with where that number stands?
Absolutely. I mean, the cards are working. The cards are working brilliantly. As soon as you swipe your yellow cards for the black card, the yellow card is disabled and the black card is active, and you can transact with it immediately. So we're quite satisfied with what we've done so far. Well, in the sense that the card is working, the card is compliant, and the card is doing what it should be. I think the numbers that we were hoping for people coming through, that we've tried incentives. We tried to incentivize people, give them the reward to come through, just give them a reason, besides the fact that they have to change the card to come through. But even that didn't yield as much activity as we wanted. So this is why now we'll be going even more, communicating even more broader and wider, because we want people to get this message.
Yeah. Lastly, Nikki, just from an institution as the Post Bank, there's a point that I think we would like you to clarify. The relationship between yourselves as Post Bank and the South African Post Office. And part of the context, of course, is the troubles at the Post Office and the business rescue process that's underway there, and even talk of possible liquidation, etc. So as you do this transition, are you able to give guarantees about the institutional relationship, if any, between yourselves and Post Office, and whether this has any implications for your ability to continue to be a part of the paying out of these crucial social grants?
So maybe a bit of context. So the customers that we have, probably 98% of them were not using the post office. We stopped using the post office in March last year. That was a combination of reasons. I think one of them being the customer experience that we want. I think all of us could see that people were queuing. Sometimes these were robbed. The CIT cost was getting out of hand. But mostly, I think for us as Postbank, the customer experience, we just weren't happy. So we went on a drive to educate people about how to use the card, and they actually picked up on it. And they started using their cards, and we're very happy with that. Almost 100% of our customers were using the card. So we still have a relationship with the post office. We're working very well with the post office. I think we have a responsibility as Postbank as well. If there is an opportunity that we can help the post office to actually perform better, we will do that. But I think first and foremost, we have a responsibility as a bank to be compliant in the way that we work. So if in any way we find that anyone we partner with is not compliant in terms of what is required within our license, then of course that relationship becomes a bit difficult and a bit tricky. Yeah. So we have to get that balance right. But absolutely, we still have a relationship with the post office.
But just to be categorical, that relationship is one of partnership, not an institutional, I don't want to use the word entanglement, but basically,
definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not an entanglement. I think we've been lucky, whether with the former minister, this current minister, they've never put that pressure on us, and they hold each and every entity within their portfolio to their own responsibility. They have the responsibility to make the entity work, to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and therefore we look at things commercially. But of course, we'll always find the balance in doing that we are South African. We do have to support each other where we can. I mean, we partnered with retailers, which is where people have to get their cards. There was no issue with that. Retailers are privately owned. So we've never been put under pressure to do anything that's not commercially viable for the bank or for the customer.
Yeah, and as you are explaining this and how your institution works, just a question about if someone, is a client of Postbank, what's their point of interface with the bank? You mentioned about the difficulties that arose when the post office was that go-to interface. What happens now? Where do I go?
Look, our strategy is that we're going to be digitally first, but being mindful, and I think everyone, when they use this term, they always have the responsibility to explain it, because being digitally first doesn't mean that you're 100% digital. You take care of your customers and you meet them where they need you. So that's one thing. I think with the history of Postbank is that we know there was a high reliance on the post office. But because we are governed, we have oversight, we have regulators that we work with, we have to be compliant as any other bank. So if a space is not adequately, use the word catered enough to be compliant, it means that you can't use it. And therefore we have that responsibility as well. So that's the first thing. But I think in our journey, in our strategies, that we've always said that our first 18 months, well, since I joined July 2023, the strategy that I've put forward was that the first 18 months was that we stabilize the bank, and that's what we've been focusing on. I think we've guaranteed that there won't be disruptions with payments of grants. I think we've achieved that. And now we've put over 200 what we call mini sites across the country for that interaction, that people can actually speak to a Postbank person. I think the next phase of our strategy is to how do we make that permanent.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Nikki Mbengashe, who is the Postbank CEO.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Let me take a quick call from Gift. Gift, good morning to you. You are calling from Konge. You want to talk to me about the State of the Nation address?
Of course, as you know, the president will be delivering that State of the Nation address. Look, I think one of my expectations on what the president I'm expecting to speak upon is the issue of government interventions to capacitate the state, particularly stimulating the economy and slash unemployment. But most critically is to ensure that Eskom has got financial stability And also there's law enforcement and infrastructure support to provide a reliable and affordable electricity, because most of the time, in particular in the rural towns, there's always these electricity outages. I'm not talking about load shedding, but electricity outages. So I think that provides that affordable electricity, but also that reliable electricity, I think I expect the president to speak about. But also intervention to stabilize Transnet, and including the debt relief, but also assisting these struggling SOEs. Just a few minutes ago, you spoke about Post Bank, and I think those SOEs that include Denel, the Post Bank must be included in that support. But most importantly, lastly, is the urgent intervention to stem the rise in the number of dysfunctional municipalities in our country. You know for a fact that most municipalities are struggling because there's no tax revenue base, and I think a new financial model needs to be introduced to support these municipalities towards this district development model. I think those are the issues that I think President must speak upon, because to me they are very critical in ensuring that there's stability in the country.
Yeah, Gift, thank you for that. I mean, you clearly have been thinking through these issues, and thank you for sharing what's on your mind and what you believe are the priorities for the State of the Nation address when President Ramaphosa delivers it a bit later on this evening. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the KwaZulu-Natal government says the Climate Change Response Fund, which President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about in the 2024 State of the Nation address, has not yet been established. The aim of the fund, which government and the private sector are supposed to have established, is to respond to the impact of climate change. The streets surrounding Parliament in Cape Town are quiet ahead of President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address at the City Hall this evening. Meanwhile, the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure says all its deployments are in place. And medical charity Doctors Without Borders has accused the Israeli military and settlers in the occupied West Bank of systematically obstructing Palestinians' access to health care. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
We've been telling you to avoid Giluli's interchange this morning, and that advice stays where it is, and it's probably even going to get worse now because the N12 link onto the N3 North, where this truck overturn, is now closed for recovery. So all of that traffic arriving into Giluli's interchange, and then it's confusing and complicated at the best of times. All of a sudden then has to realise, they can't take the flyover, so they've got to maybe change lanes and make an alternative plan, and they've got to do that in real time very, very quickly. So everything's just slowed up. The R24, the airport highway, if you like, is back to Barbara Road. The N12 in from Boxburg Benoni, standing back as far as Jet Park. So just stay off at the Edenvale Road, which links the N12 and R24. It's an absolute mess as motorists sort of duck off those highways and just jam that route as well. The Mike 1 Parktown through to Santon stays pretty heavily backed up. Mopani Highway into Bremer Street, still queuing both ways into town and out to Shoshinguve. Durban breakdown into North before Gateway, very heavy getting up from the Queen Dundee Drive up through Komashi this morning. And Cape Town's a lot of pressure on the Kuiberg interchange. The M5 from sort of Plumstead, Ottery, really heavy. Kuiberg Road coming through from Brooklyn, really heavy. I think what's holding everything up this morning is a big truck crash just off the interchange on Kuiberg Road at 4 Trekker Road. That's right in the heart of Maitland. You can imagine the mess that is causing. We can see that unfolding on the M5 North. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you once again. My favorite team, the MI Cape Town. We've been hearing a bit from Kagiso Rabada ahead of that SA20 final.
Yes, Thulas, I'm going to dub this as your favorite team.
I just love the name, just to be clear, you know.
Yes, we know Thulas loves saying it. MI Cape Town. Say it with me. Okay, never mind. Let's go to this team. Yes, Kagiso Rabada spearheading the attack. And I can tell you what, knowing Rabada and the MI boys, they are fired up come the Bull Ring Saturday. They've secured a spot in the final after their 39-run victory over the Paarl Royals. in qualifier 1. Now they've had dynamic openers like Ryan Rickleton and Rassie van der Dissen, who set the tone and provide support in the middle order, as well as that world-class bowling lineup featuring Trent Bolt, Rashid Khan and Rabada himself. So the Bullring is set to host that epic showdown this Saturday. MI Cape Town hoping to chase their first SA20 title. Now, the Sunrisers Eastern Cape, they cruised to victory by 32 runs in their eliminator against the Joburg Super Kings in Centurion last night. Sunrisers now move on to the second qualifier at the same venue today, and that's against the Paarl Royals. Now, the winner between these two will face MI Cape Town in the final at Wanderers. Now, let's look at Sunrisers. They were put into bat by the Super Kings. They compiled 184 for 6, thanks largely to an unbeaten 63 in 40 balls by Aidan Markram. The Super Kings finished on 152 for 7. Here's Markram.
That's what our bowlers have been really, really good for us, and from a batting point of view, our batters, we just haven't clicked the way we would have liked to, and before you know it, you're like 5 games in and you're like sheepers, man, like kept playing catch up the whole time. But good signs tonight with the bat at least. Small things like that opening partnership goes a really long way for us, and then for some of us to spend some time out there and then to get to at least to 180 is a step in the right direction at least.
And just a quick recap of the Betway Premiership action. Orlando Pirates celebrating a hard-fought 2-1 victory over Sekhukhune United. Mamelodi Sundowns cruising 3-0 was their win over SuperSport United. TS Galaxy, Polokwane City 0-0, and Chippa United had a 4-1 victory over Magesi. Let's hear now from Eddie Howe, who felt his Newcastle United were deserved winners in their EFL Cup semi-final with Arsenal. They had a 2-0 victory in the second leg at St James Park, sealing the tie 4-0 on aggregate.
It was always going to be a difficult game because, well, you know, such a gap between the ties. I think that's unique in itself, and we had a long time to sit on our 2-0 lead and to think about how we were going to approach the second leg. In the end, all the thinking's redundant, really. We were always going to play the same way and try to execute how we want to play the game. And I thought the players did that really well because we were brave, aggressive, everything that we want to be, and definitely the final message to the players really is to try and attack and be ourselves.
And finally, golf. Jack Buchanan birdied the iconic par 5 18th at Leopard Creek, finishing 2 shots shy of Zimbabwe's Tanaka Chatora in the opening round of the RNA Africa Amateur Championship. South Africa's number 1 Lisa Kutsa opened up a 2-shot lead in the Africa Amateur Women's Invitational. The Zimbabwean Chatora responded in the best way to 2 early bogeys with a par of eagles for a leading 7 under par 65. That's it. That's your morning brief sport in the golf bag. John Herika will swing by around 12:30 for more sport. Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. So some reprieve I see from the Licensing Council for Fly South Air. 12 months of a reprieve?
That's right, Thulas, and they have 12 months to fix their ownership structure, which was deemed non-compliant with domestic air licensing regulations. The Air Services Licensing Council ruled that Fly South Air failed to meet the requirement of having at least 75% of voting rights held by local citizens. In the meantime, the airline has assured its customers that flights will continue uninterrupted despite the council's ruling. Fly South Air's Chief Marketing Officer, Kirby Gordon, emphasized that the airline is fully operational and that customers can book and fly with confidence. Now, the ASLC's decision was initially prompted by a complaint lodged by Lift Airlines, which questioned Fly South Air's compliance with the Air Services Licensing Act. The council, of course, has given Fly South Air a year to rectify its ownership structure, and if it fails to do so, the airline may face sanctions, including suspension or cancellation of its license. The low-cost airline is evaluating its options, including shareholder adjustments or legal recourse to resolve the complaint matter.
And then tell me about, this is not good in Dowling, is it? Local business conditions, you're saying they've slumped to a 3-year low. That is for the month of January.
That's right, Tula. So it's been really difficult to gauge where sentiment is at. But one thing's for sure, the initial optimism post the national election is slowly starting to fizzle out. And we're seeing business players, yes, being confident in the government, but also looking for real change, real reforms that'll actually boost growth. And that's what we're seeing in the S&P Global SA Purchasing Managers Index. South Africa's private sector off to a rocky start with business conditions taking a sharp turn for the worse last month. The index fell to 47.4, its lowest level since July 2021, indicating a worsening economic climate. Now, the main culprit behind this contraction is a drop in client demand, with companies citing lower customer incomes and weaker foreign demand as major concerns. New business volumes have fallen at their fastest rate since March 2024, and new export orders have declined for the fifth consecutive month. The services sector has also been hit by the slowdown, while industrial production has shown some resilience with modest growth. Now, with demand under pressure, firms are focusing on clearing backlogged work, leading to reduced outstanding orders and renewed cutbacks in staffing levels and purchasing activity. But there seems to be some positive signs on the horizon. Supply chains are showing signs of stabilizing, with delivery times increasing only mildly, and of course the moderate inflation also coming in as a positive. Business sentiment in the meantime has also improved, but this only for the second half of the year, where business players, private sector, expect growth to increase.
All right, lastly, Ndauling, give us a sense of what kind of a day we're looking at this Thursday in as far as markets go.
The local markets are likely to start the day in positive territory. Risks still remain as traders await President Ramaphosa's first SONA under the Government of National Unity. In terms of company news, traders will be waking up to results from Lesaka Technologies and AMSA, just for an update on where things are at from a financial point of view. And then meanwhile, on the currency front, the rand remaining steady at 18.58 to the dollar this hour. Over in the US, futures sitting comfortably in the green, indicating that we could be in for another positive day of trade in Wall Street. And then over in Asia, markets also upbeat as global investor sentiment improves. Those stocks on track to close mostly in positive territory.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lechela. She's kept you updated on business, the markets and the economy over the last 3 hours here on The Morning Brief.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
18 minutes to 9. Let's focus on an area of our economy that we hardly ever focus on. Well, at least in the last few years. It used to be all the buzz a few years ago. The maritime sector. So the Maritime Business Chamber is highlighting several pressing issues for government to address when President Cyril Ramaphosa delivers the 2025 State of the Nation address, and particularly in relation to the growth and transformation of the country's maritime sector. These include finalizing the Oceans Economy Master Plan, establishing a dedicated maritime authority, implementing the vessel recapitalization program, and transforming the fishing and shipping industry. So quite a lot, as you can hear. So let's welcome into the conversation Unathi Sonti, who is the executive chairperson of the Maritime Business Chamber. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Why should the maritime sector be front and center and an area of focus of the State of the Nation address today in relation to its contribution to our GDP, realized as well as potential?
Thank you, Bratola, and morning to the SFM listeners. You would note that, one, in terms of maritime itself, the maritime transport, 90% of the goods that we have in the country and around the world is transported via sea transport. And that tells you that this is a very critical and an important, part of the sector that needs to be, followed up and make sure that we build it and beef it up so that it can benefit the economy of this country. Secondly to that, you would know that we've got 8 commercial ports. These commercial ports, they play a very crucial and important role in the continent and globally in the shipping industry. So those are some of the things that as the country we need to start to be looking at and seeing, how do we then benefit from this thing outside, apart from the vast 3,000 kilometers, of a coastline that we have in this country, which then talks to the opportunities that then are in the ocean itself, as our fishing industry is supposed to be.
Is it your sense that over the last few years, I remember there was a time when the ocean economy was all the talk. I mean, when President Jacob Zuma was still in office, I remember that used to be the buzzword. Is it your sense that that has fallen on the back burner a little bit? And if so, why? Why do you believe that is?
Indeed, it has fallen. And one of the reasons for that is because there hasn't been a champion. All these things, they require someone who's got a political power, whom then would be the champion of this thing. So you would note that, the late minister was the one that was pushing for this thing, for the ocean's economy. And that then, within former President Zuma's cabinet, there was someone who was standing for this thing. At the time also we had, now she's with the minister, former transport minister Chikunga at the time as well. She was so passionate about maritime, and I think that's what we are lacking currently. A political head that is so passionate about the maritime affairs.
So what would prioritizing the maritime economy look like for you, for the president? Firstly, tell me about the policy interventions that you hope to hear coming through, if not from the SONA tonight, perhaps from subsequent actions that are to be undertaken by the 7th administration.
Thank you. One of those would be, the amendment of the National Port Act of the National Port Act 12 of 2005. That would be one. Number two, it would be the finalization of the Oceans Economy Master Plan. This is a process that has been going on, and we have seen in all these other sectors, the mining and the other side to rail and everything else, where ocean, master plans have been developed and concluded, within a space of 2 or 3 years. And this one has taken us this long. It's now 2025, and we have not concluded that one. And that is one of the key, because that one will take over from whatever where we had left off in terms of the Oceans Economy Master Plan, the operation package.
So for someone listening and thinking, well, this is a concern for the big shipping companies, your Transnets and the big fishing industry players, why does it matter? What I'm asking is, how much potential does the ocean economy and maritime economy hold for participation of people, outside of the big players, and bringing them into the value chain? So why should anyone else other than the big shipping operators and the likes, the port operators, be interested in this conversation?
There is quite a number of things that also the country has been looking at in terms of skilling around, the maritime sector. These are opportunities that will create jobs and the reskilling of our youth in this space where there is marine manufacturing. If we talk about one also, if we talk about the fishing vessel recapitalization program, where now all these big companies that they've got these fishing rights for 15 to 20 years, now because of majority of them, they've got these old vessels that they are using. If we were to start then to recapitalize, they bring their old vessels, we take we build new vessels. There will now be a need for the shipbuilding sector to grow, and that will indeed absorb a lot of young people that will be trained and begin then to participate in that. And that's an opportunity also for small business. Secondly, there is what we call small scale fishing and also what we call category C, which are the new entrances. These are opportunities that are there standing for small businesses, but all of these things, they require a willing government with policies that are able then to, policies that are able then to accommodate all these initiatives that can take this country forward. Remember what was said about, the oceans economy. Oceans economy is said to, at least to contribute to the GDP of this country to about, I think, 170 billion, and if by 2030, and create, over, 10,000 of jobs. So an opportunity arises for this country to take this thing and move it forward, because we are indeed a maritime nation, but we require a government and from the president that really takes these things forward.
Lastly, tell me about the need or the call for there to be a dedicated maritime ministry. Is that the one of the extents to which you believe we should go in signaling that we take this sector seriously?
Indeed, I would make an example. In 1 year, we had here a international maritime seafarers day, and on a day that is very important, seafarers are the people that are moving, goods inside the vessels themselves, the ships that are moving, and these are critical people. On this day, the former, Minister of Transport in this country, because transport has got a lot of things that are, in it, the components there. Instead of honoring this one critical event, which is internationally recognized, he went to launch a bus service because to him, that's what then speaks to, to the people on the ground and everything else, and neglect this. But if then we had a ministry, we would look into these things. You would note that for the past 2 years, for the past 2 bienniums, we have been trying to get into as a candidate of the category C in the International Maritime Organization Council, and we have failed to do that. Obviously, because of quite a number of things, geopolitics, but because also we are not talking to each other. But if there was a dedicated ministry or a maritime authority, we would then be business, the private sector, and the entire society would be working out, campaigns to grow the sector itself.
Yeah, all right. I've got to thank you for your time. That's Unati Sonti there, who is the executive chairperson of the Maritime Business Chamber. I'm always fascinated by these sectors that don't enjoy daily attention. And then when you start peeling away at one layer after another, you come to these conversations such as the one that I've just had with Unati Sonti there.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Galuli's interchange remains closed, coming off the N12 and R24 routes from Ekurhuleni onto the N3 north. A truck crash on that flyover ramp this morning. A lot of confusion going on there as you arrive and have to make a last-minute decision as to where you're going to go. The traffic is extreme. It has been since about 6 o'clock this morning. N12 backing heavily to Craft Road, the R24 backing up towards Barber Road, and the Edenvale Road that links the N12 and R24 taking a lot of that traffic trying to escape those highways and causing some heavy queues as well. Pressure at the Crown, the Mike 1 from Boyson's getting up at the Crown. That's just getting quite busy and quite slow. Normally it's easing this time of morning. Broken down truck, Cliffdale. It's a nightmare if you're going out of Durban to Pietermaritzburg. They haven't been able to solve what they can do with that Cliffdale problem. You get a broken down truck in the roadworks, one lane open, and everything just backs enormously. It's back towards Shongweni. Maybe travel later. Always check before you travel on that section out to Pietermaritzburg via Cliffdale, because you can get to Shongweni and you can sit for an hour. Cape Town, M5 running north very heavy this morning from Kenilworth up to Kubo, get a change. There is a truck crash off the interchange, which I can't help think is causing this problem. The truck crash is right in the middle of Maitland on Kubo Road and Voortrekker Road, and that's just a bit of a disaster around that area, and I think it's just feeding back into that whole Kubo get a change. You know how bad it can be when it's bad. N2 Botrefia to Grabo, that remains closed as protest action continues. You'll divert R44 via Kleinmont, or you'll do the extended divert up through Villiers-Dorp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
We definitely know what good insurance is. Our insurance don't delay when it comes to any claims. If something happens to one of our vehicles on the road, service delivery is the main thing.
They make sure that you are a satisfied customer from the beginning to the end.
It's definitely a win-win with our insurance.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Reigning champions and log leaders Masandawana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Korkop. But the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzanti's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Don't miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million rand daily lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 rand, play Daily Lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Let me take as many of your calls as possible, so I'll pull myself back a little bit. Let's speak to Eunice in Joburg. Good morning to you, Eunice. You want to talk to me about the state of the nation?
Yes, Thulasizwe. One of the issues that I think definitely will come up at tonight's SONA debate is the question of the NHI. Now, the NHI, in my opinion, is to make healthcare accessible to the masses. Am I right?
Yeah.
Now, yesterday you ran a quick story on Sheikh Mashaba. And I was actually reading that story. Sheikh Mashaba had a bladder infection and he was admitted to the Helen Joseph Hospital. And apparently from the family's statement, he was given horrible treatment there. Now, if you can recall, not long ago, a talk show host, Tom London, had a similar experience at the same hospital. Now, because he was Sheikh Mashaba, he took the intervention of Panyaza Lesufi and the MEC for Sport to intervene. Now, my question is, he was, from what I heard there, the doctor only saw him shakes after 24 hours. Then he had a catheter put in, and they asked him to remove it, and no one even came to check. The doctor didn't even come back to check him. It's at the same hospital. Question is, now he was then moved to a private ward. Now, they've got the Follertang ward there. I'm not sure if he's there. Now, my point is, what about the other thousands of sheikhs that are in all the state hospitals?
Absolutely.
And that has to be addressed urgently. It's not because it was sheikhs and we wish him well, but what about everyone else? And until these issues are not resolved, Thulasizwe, we're not going to improve our healthcare system.
Spot on. Eunice, thank you for that. I have absolutely no quibbles with what you said. The quality and experience of all of us should be exactly the same, and it should be a matter of standards being maintained even as the NHI is being rolled out. Let me take a call from Vincent in the Western Cape. Good morning to you, Vincent. Also on the State of the Nation address.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Simelane.
Good morning.
Before I go on the serious business, I'd like just to start on a lighter note. We are spoiled by the Simelane because there's another Simelane there to Gwala, so we choose the Simelane to listen to in the morning.
The Simelanes are everywhere. Please go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to talk about what you mentioned earlier on. It is very true. I was also thinking the same. That why can't just the president address us from the union buildings?
Yeah.
Then all that pomp that they'll be doing, that parading on red carpets and with their wives wearing Gucci's and everything.
Yeah, because there are costs involved.
Yes, because yesterday I heard, I don't know, otherwise they were trying to deflate this thing because someone I heard from the authorities saying that there were some partners who were sponsoring them with the money for that event. I don't know, so that they can try to take the attention from us, that no, it is from the taxpayers' payers, but it is just they are just sponsored. Okay.
All right, Vincent, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for that. That's Vincent in the Western Cape. There are costs involved. Of course, part of the tradition is that it is then a joint sitting of the Houses of Parliament. So the National Assembly as well as the National Council of Provinces in one room for this occasion, for the delivery of the State of the Nation address. But you do wonder whether the other pomp and fanfare cannot be cut out further. Kirk in Cape Town, good morning. You want to talk to me about Donald Trump this morning?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, the hot topic besides SONA is Donald Trump. I think that Donald Trump is a racist bigot. I think that, and sadly, his rhetoric seems to galvanize the U.S. citizens around their self-interest and not their role as a world leader. In addition to that, I think that AfriForum should be taken to task for in some way. I don't know what recourse there is against free speech of that nature.
Yeah.
But I do believe that they have divided the country, and they do this every few months with their irresponsible agenda.
All right.
So it's very sad to see, and we suffer. The petrol price goes up, our economy is hammered, the rand weakens, and it's it's just totally irresponsible.
Gotcha.
And I must say, I do appreciate the diplomatic efforts of and our international relations department.
All right,
They seem to be doing their job.
Kirk, thank you for that. That's Kirk in Cape Town. Lastly, Lazarus, short and sharp for me, please, if you don't mind, on issues of
I'll be short.
public funds.
Very,
Yes.
very short.
Yes.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I'll be very, very short. Yeah, no, I think when I Thulasizwe, there's one thing that government must do. In terms of protecting the public purse, I think they should do cost-cutting measures. Things like boss bearers, I think they must get away with them because such things they are not budgeted for when they do budgets. But then at the end of the day, they started spending money on such things, and I think that such things they are just wasteful and they are just wasteful of money. I think that would be my party.
Boss Berard, so are you saying possibilities that if you want to have a workshop, you could have it virtually?
Yes, you can even have it at the office. Why should you go and book the hotels and then you spend a lot of money on those things? Because they are costing at the end of the day, and the place delivery can compromised.
Yeah, Lazarus, thank you. Thank you for that point. That's Lazarus there in Kwakwa. And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for all of your engagement. Always appreciated. The Talking Point with Kethi Mutlatlana is up next here on SAFM, but that is coming up after the news. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.
In our top stories, KZN MEC speaks on Ramaphosa's Climate Response Fund and escalation of illegal mining in Gauteng a concern. Good morning. The KwaZulu-Natal government says the Climate Change Response Fund, which President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about in the 2024 State of the Nation address, has not yet been established. The aim of the fund, which government and the private sector are supposed to have established, is to respond to the impact of climate change. KwaZulu-Natal has seen severe weather conditions over the past few years. Francois Rogers is Finance MEC.
At the last SONA, the President had made a statement that we would be getting certain funding for disaster management and for climate change, which in fact has not materialized. Any future developments, we need to take the change in climatic conditions into account. When it comes to resilient infrastructure, particularly in housing and in roads and stormwater, more emphasis has to be placed on infrastructure that is going to be resilient to the climate change and to the storms that batter our province.
The streets surrounding Parliament in Cape Town are quiet ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address at the City Hall this evening. Meanwhile, the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure, NatJoints, says all its deployments are in place. The structure is responsible for coordinating all security and law enforcement operations throughout the country. It says the SAPS, State Security Agency, and SANDF held regular meetings with the NatJoint structure in the build-up to the SONA. Police spokesperson Athlenda Mate says disruptions will not be tolerated.
Any lawlessness, criminality or behavior that contravenes the law will be dealt with accordingly. We are thus confident that Thursday's evening's address will take place with minimal to zero incident. The NatJoints wishes to remind communities that the airspace around the City Hall will be restricted during the State of the Nation address for both manned and unmanned aircrafts. No drones will be allowed from 7 o'clock on Thursday morning until 10 p.m. later in the evening.
Gauteng Finance and Economic Development MEC Lebogang Mahile says the escalation of illegal mining in the province is a serious concern. Illegal mining is prevalent in areas including Langlaagte, at Zamampilo, Riverlee, Selby, Dobsonville, Roodepoort, Florida and Cleveland in Gauteng. The province, which has about 160 mining companies, is the country's economic hub. Mahile, who attended the African Mining Indaba in Cape Town, has called on a lasting solution to end illegal mining.
We are concerned about illegal mining, and that's why we're saying there has to be a discussion, though it's a national competence. But one of the issues that we'll be raising and sponsoring is that perhaps it's time to have a conversation about how do we formalize the sector and how do we ensure that we help those who are already doing this to actually stop doing illicit mining and then regulate it properly, and hopefully it will contribute to the revenue, into job creation, into fighting poverty and unemployment.
Nigeria's military rulers are reported to have ordered the International Committee of the Red Cross to close all its offices and leave the country immediately. The French news agency says it has been told that foreign staff are already departing. No reason has been given for the expulsion. Medical charity Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, has accused the Israeli military and settlers in the occupied West Bank of systematically obstructing Palestinians' access to health care. In its report, the medical charity says this is putting lives at risk. The BBC's Imogen Fox has the details.
MSF says there have been hundreds of attacks on healthcare in the West Bank since October 7, 2023. Those interviewed in its report describe hospitals surrounded by Israeli forces, shot at, and medical equipment destroyed. Health services are also being undermined because Israel is withholding tax revenue collected from and meant for the occupied territories. Israel insists it always follows international law, and it won't like this report.
Recapping the top story, the KwaZulu-Natal government says the Climate Change Response Fund, which President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about in the 2024 State of the Nation address, has not yet been established. The aim of the fund, which government and the private sector are supposed to have established, is to respond to the impact of climate change. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by our Insurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS card to 43187.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m., bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation address. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Forget the chocolates and treats. You can really sweeten your month of love with low-cost insurance for your older car. With Insurance Essential, accident claims are paid out in cash, so you can choose the panel beater you want to use. Add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Insurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 Rand. SMS car to 43187. That's car to 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP, TCs and information online.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.